Okay, we are live. We are recording on Zoom. And I will welcome everybody to the Lunenburg Select Board meeting of Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. At 7:01, I open tonight's meeting. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread, and all town facilities are open to the public during limited hours and by appointment. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting will be broadcast live through the local access channel, on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after its conclusion. You can join this meeting on your smartphone, tablet, or computer by using the Zoom application. The meeting webinar ID for tonight's meeting is 909-174-0347. And if you do not have a smart device, a tablet, phone, or computer, you can dial in by phone, regular telephone. That number is 888-475-4499. Again, the webinar ID is 909-174-0347. If you are using the Zoom application, please familiarize yourself with the location of the raise your hand button so I can see when people want to speak. And if you are on a phone and you are muted, to unmute your phone, it's *6, and to raise your hand is *9 to raise your hand on the phone. I will call people at the appropriate times when the meeting calls for public input. So we also have a waiting room, so I'm going to be trying to monitor that. That is something new. I see Mr. Jeffries has joined, so let me unmute him. Okay. So I will open tonight's meeting by asking for a roll call vote of members. And let me turn off this monitor behind me to get better light. Okay. So in the order I see people on the screen, Ms. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Dwyer.
Here.
Mr. Marino.
Present.
Mr. Jeffries.
Present.
And I am present. We have Madam Town Manager. Are you present with us?
I am.
Okay. So I will turn it over to Ms. Adams for the flag and the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any public comment from the board this evening?
I do.
Ms. Adams.
And before I make it, can I ask you what it means that you have a waiting room? Because
People just can't look, they can't be members attending without my approval of admitting them into the Zoom meeting.
Oh, okay.
So before, everybody could just join with the number. Now there's a waiting room, so I actually have to acknowledge that somebody is joining.
Okay, because parents have been left in waiting rooms at school meetings, and it happened to me, and I didn't know how that would have. Okay, so thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so I have a comment tonight, and I feel like I make it a similar one, but now that it's October, I just want to basically say, I guess it's kind of, I'm sorry for town in the sense that October is always been a very special month in Lunenburg, especially for kids with sports and homecoming. And all the activities that bring people together and make them feel happy and connect peers. I know my parents hosted 4 floats for me, 3 for my sister. And there's all these events that we're lacking right now that are an important part of people feeling like connected. And so with all those things missing, I guess I wanted to say I'm appreciative for all the nostalgia that I have, and I'm hopeful for when people get those things back. And I'm sorry for anybody who's missing them right now. And on top of that, I've said this before, sort of my thoughts go out to teachers, parents, and students who have been surviving their new Google Classroom life. It's very interesting. And so in the spirit of it being October, this is how it is being with kids on a Google Classroom. They like to share things. And it's totally crazy, but good luck to everybody. And I hope it ends soon.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the board? Any public comment from the public? Oh, Madam Town Manager.
This is actually an announcement. We can wait.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. Let's.
You want me
You
to
can either
announce
wait
it?
for an announcement
Okay.
or
I'll
you can do it now if you'd like.
Same as last week from the town clerk. Just a reminder that the last day to register to vote is Saturday, October 24th in the clerk's office. And they'll be open from 2 to 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the town hall. And the town hall is also open 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. that day for early voting.
Thank you. Okay, now public comment from the public. Ms. Licio. Hold on, I'm trying to unmute you. Okay, you're live.
Hi, this is Rhonda Licio, 181 Reservoir Road. I just have a public comment to make. The town offices, departments, and public bodies have all been bending over backwards to assist the company in moving its project forward. The project is progressing at lightning speed through all permitting processes in town. It took Mike and I almost a year to proceed with building a garage and altering our driveway to divert the town's polluted stormwater. The difficulties we and other residents have faced with our projects and the ease at which a company can proceed is startling. For a massive facility to be approved in a fraction of the time it takes for a garage is unacceptable. I urge the town to pay closer attention to the annual report it receives from the assessors. Year after year, the numbers show approximately 90% of the town's tax revenue comes from residential property. The contrast between the lack of accurate, fast, and efficient service faced by residents and the overabundance of assistance this company has received cannot be justified by the numbers. I want to make my position clear. I am not suggesting businesses should face unnecessary hurdles either. But for the local government, especially the Conservation Commission, to offer a level of service to a company far beyond what is available to residents is disgusting. It reeks of the stench of the corporate favoritism displayed by the federal government. I stand corrected in stating in a recent email that the majority of conservation commissioners is incapable of setting aside the hammer in any case. Clearly, all are willing to set aside the tactics used to delay and obstruct projects when the commission receives something in return. The Select Board also recently bailed out the school's transportation companies, which failed to provide service to the fraction of the tax base which would have received the service in the first place. I expect the town to focus on operating like a responsible local government, which is supposed to answer directly to taxpayers instead of modeling itself after the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the public? Seeing none. Okay. Let me make sure I have everybody here. I think I inadvertently. Yes, okay. Inadvertently muted somebody. Okay. The only announcement I have is I've been asked by those who are putting this together that the grab and go lobsters for Lunenburg which is going to be held October 17th. They are still looking for anybody else who's interested. Their close date, I believe, is October 12th to get a final count. So you can go to the website, which is lakeshirley.com/lobsters.html. And you can purchase your lobster and or raffle tickets online there. And again, it would be from 12 to 3:30 on Saturday, October 17th of this year. So you have about another week to buy your tickets and get involved and show support for the police and fire associations where all the money is being donated to. 7:05, a public hearing for a wine and malt package store license application by Lanny Orchards, 294 Chase Road. So I see Mr. Lanny is here. I'm going to unmute him. And I'm going to ask for a little intro to this from the town manager, please.
So if you recall, the town voted to petition the state legislature for an additional liquor license at Lonnie Orchards, which was ultimately approved and signed off by the governor. And therefore, Mr. Lonnie had to submit all the appropriate paperwork as other applications do, and it would still go to the ABCC for approval and needs the board's approval as the local licensing authority. So all the paperwork is in order. Mr. Lonnie's taxes are up to date. So everything.
Okay, and before we start, I guess I should make this official, and since it is a public hearing, read the public hearing notice. The Lunenburg Licensing Authority will hold a public meeting on Tuesday, October 6, 2020 at 7:05 p.m. via Zoom video conference on the application submitted by Lanny Orchards, Inc., doing business as Lanny Orchards for a wine and malt beverages package store license located at 294 Chase Road, Lunenburg, Massachusetts. The premises is described as a single-story enclosed farm stand building consisting of 1,950 square feet with 4 entrances and exits, with a storage and display area for beer and wine and a refrigerated case. And the rest of it is how to join this meeting. It is all published and went into the local paper as per requirements. So we now have an open public hearing. So I'll bring it to you, Mr. Lanny, if you would like to say anything first.
Certainly. Can you guys hear me all right?
We can.
All right, great. Thank you for having me here tonight. Really, the thought behind this wasn't about your typical package store that you see everywhere. This was really about bringing in locally produced craft beers and wines from local producers, farm wineries that are in the area, to try to help promote all of us and to have something else to sell. So I already know of a few wineries that are ready to on board from Massachusetts that are willing to bring their product to us to sell. And there's a ton of them around in the area. And what I'm going for is like a local niche kind of market of specialty wines and malt beverages, hard ciders, and nothing more. We're not looking to, bring in mass-produced Budweiser type product. It's really about kind of promoting the area and what the area has to offer. There's a few wineries in southern New Hampshire that I've spoken to. There's a whole bunch of them in Massachusetts that we go to farmers markets remotely that they're at. And they're very excited about having a place that they don't have to compete with the mass-produced stuff. And I just think it'll help the region in general to have a place to go to look at all these different things that are produced, nearby and locally. And I just wanted to thank everyone involved to get us to this point, especially Heather. You guys have been great throughout this process. It's taken forever, and I know it's COVID related as far as the state goes. But thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. I will open it up to the board. If we have all the applications and all the permit requests before us, we have the floor plan. Can you just brief us very briefly, Mr. Lanny, on the hours of your operation?
Well, being a farm, they kind of fluctuate a little bit throughout the year. So on the application itself, we just put like the most amount of hours we could be open at a particular time of year. So I think we wrote down 8 to 6 Monday through Saturday, and also I think 10 to 6 on Sunday is what we have down there. Now, right now we're only open 9 to 5. So, and in the winter sometimes we'll be closed on Sunday. But we are open year round. So really it's just going to, the latest it'll ever be is 6 p.m. and the earliest would be 8 a.m.
Yeah, that's fair. We understand it's seasonal and we understand that it fluctuates. As long as you've chosen the outliers, you can certainly open less than you apply for. You just can't open more than what you applied for.
Certainly, that's what we were thinking. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll open up Mr. Jeffries.
Good evening, Mr. Lanning. My questions tonight are focused around alcohol training and your alcohol policy. So would you, can you explain what training your staff have undertaken in anticipation of being able to sell alcohol, and then also what alcohol policy you have implemented?
Well, at the moment, I am the only one who has taken the training course. It's an accredited course from Massachusetts for alcohol serving and selling, even though we're not serving. We're only selling. The employees will be able to sign up to take this course as well. We just haven't gotten there yet to have them do it. It's only $8. We'll cover the cost of that for any of our employees that are of age to sell, to train them on how to check IDs properly. But at the moment, I am the only one who has done it as of yet. But it's going to be open to all of our employees to do that at our expense. We will have them fully trained before we bring the alcohol into the building. We have nothing in there right now, so I haven't had them do it yet.
So just to be clear that I understood you correctly, you're going to mandate that all of your employees will complete this training prior to them selling alcohol.
The ones that are of age, yes. The ones that are of age to sell it, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
And then, we have some, I know that the town manager is in receipt of some alcohol policies that other companies have provided previously to us. I would urge you to, not reinvent the wheel, maybe borrow some of their existing policies for you to implement for yourself. Certainly, I think we all can stand behind what you're trying to do. But we want to make sure that alcohol does not get into the hands of kids. And knowing that your staff, some of them are that age, it's really important that they understand the legal implications related to that. But certainly I support I'm generally hesitant to support expanding alcohol sales, but I am supportive of what you're trying to do and will support this vote today.
I appreciate that. And I will definitely make sure that they're all trained properly. The last thing I need, because it's my butt with the state, is to have one of them trained poorly on how to handle this. But like I said, we just weren't quite there yet. I took the course, so I had a good understanding of it, and I will make all of them that are of age, take the course as well, and we will have periodic meetings as refreshers on how to do this.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
No, I'm prepared to make a motion unless.
Hold on, it's a public hearing, so I want to ask if anybody has any questions from the public. Seeing no one raising their hands, Ms. Adams, I will go back to you.
Okay, so I would make a motion for the wine and malt package store license for Lonnie Orchards, 294 Chase Road.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate your vote, because all of these are roll call votes. So I realize I've been saying all along, say aye, but just give your vote as I call your name. So Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
Ms. Adams,
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer,
Aye.
Mr. Marino,
Aye.
and an aye from me. Mr. Lanny, good luck, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I like the plan you've put together, so look forward to when you've gotten it all in swing. I look forward to coming by and seeing what local wines you're carrying.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good luck.
Okay. 7:15, a joint meeting of the Select Board and the Parks Commission to determine appointment of Christopher Sullivan of 108 Highland Street to the Parks Commission, vacancy with a term to expire at the next annual town election. So let me first join the meeting, unmute the Parks Commission. So Chair Karen Menard, Susanna Jewell,
Hi, Mabel.
Dave Passios, the applicant, Mr. Sullivan. Karen, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. So is there anybody, I don't know if you're joined on a phone or on a computer. You look like a computer. Okay. So is there anybody else aside from the three members and the applicant who you want unmuted here?
Nope, that is all.
Okay, so I will let you call your meeting to order first.
I am calling the Park Commission meeting to order at 7:23 and a quick roll call of attendance. We have myself, Dave Passios. Dave, I can't hear you.
Hold
Sorry
on.
about that. Mic was off. Here.
Great, thank you. Susanna Jewell.
Here,
And where's Mabel?
she just took off.
Left, okay. That we're all here and we're ready to go.
Excellent. Okay, so we have an applicant, and to my board, we have the talent bank form in our Google Drive. So I will open it up and ask Mr. Sullivan to introduce himself, and hold on, he is muted. Let's unmute him again. All right, if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little about yourself and why you want to be on the Parks Commission.
Sure. So Chris Sullivan, 108 Highland Street here in town. I've been a resident for over 15 years. Will be 16 years next spring. We have two children in town. We've been active members of the community, kids with sports and different activities around town, Girl Scouts, soccer, plenty of soccer, basketball. Have thought for a while about means of getting involved in a capacity in town, which which time will allow me to do. This was been working on a soccer program this fall with the Lunenburg soccer canceled, and put a soccer program together with the Parks Committee, and it kind of spawned this introduction here. So
Excellent. It's always good to see a new face.
thanks.
So I would open it up. First of all, Mr. Sullivan, have you attended any of the Parks Commission meetings thus far?
The last meeting to speak about the soccer initiative that I put together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Karen, is your group, as your commission, taken a position, interviewed Mr. Sullivan already, or will you be doing that tonight with us?
We will be joining you tonight. His talent bank form came in just after our last meeting. And I do want to set the record straight for Mr. Sullivan. He actually stayed for the entire meeting last time. So I say that he has already attended one full meeting of the Park Commission.
Okay. Mr. Passios, I see that you are raising your hand.
Yes. I'd also like to mention that it'll be very nice to have Mr. Sullivan on the commission. Having eyes, ears, and voice of youth programs in town on the commission will be invaluable to our programming going forward, and be a direct connection between parks and the youth programs in town. I hope that there will be more interest in than just the youth programs, because Parks is endeavoring, launching on more endeavors than just youth sports, but he'll be covering a key part that as a liaison to those organizations. I think it'll be a great asset.
Cool. I would open up to both boards if anybody would like to ask Mr. Sullivan a question. Mr. Jeffries.
Good evening, Mr. Sullivan. So I don't have a question, I have a comment. So first, I want to thank you for your previous correspondence with the board with regards to the tennis courts. I think that was earlier in the year. And then you submitted another correspondence, I believe, recently about the speed limit issue on
Ongoing.
Yep. And so it's always good when we have residents who, are engaged and reach out to government to try to get some working solutions, and then for them to step up and volunteer as well. So I'm excited for you to join the army of volunteers that we have here in town, and look forward to you joining the Parks Commission.
Thanks.
Any other members of any of the board or the commission?
No, I'll just make the comment I make lately, especially because there are vacancies, is thank you.
Well, I'll just ask you one question, and that is,
Sure.
how do you, from what you know about the Parks Commission, how do you see the role of the Park Commission from somebody who's about to join? What you believe their mission and their mission statement would be?
Sure. So I know from attending the meeting last month that I was on, I know one of their items this year is looking at Marshall Park in a serious capacity and how to improve that area here. And being on Highland Street, Marshall Park is right around the corner from us. It's been a spot that our family's gone over to. We've been taking my son to the very rundown basketball courts, and he's shot some hoops on the court that didn't have a tree growing up in the middle of it. But I think that overall, from a park standpoint, engaging the town, continue to engage the town, the youth in town, families in town, to take advantage of all the town has to offer. There's a lot of programs. It's kind of eye-opening for me, truthfully, looking at going over the Parks and Rec site and seeing the number of programs that are there that are offered. So if we can continue to kind of push communication in those efforts to encourage more families to take advantage of those programs, that would be something that I'd see as a key factor for the group.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, Mr. Passios.
He looks muted.
There we go.
Unmuted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that was a combination of both of us unmuting at the same time. Mr. Chair, if you're ready, I'd like to make a motion.
Since there are no other questions, I would allow the motion.
Okay. I move to appoint Mr. Chris Sullivan to a Parks Commission seat with a term ending on the date of the next annual election.
Second.
Any further discussion? Otherwise, I will take a roll call of the select board.
I do have a discussion that just came to mind. I just also wanted to thank Dave Passios for advocating for our charter to exist in its new form, because without that, we wouldn't have our 2 new seats. And I know that was a long time coming and a lot of advocacy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I will take a roll call vote from the select board. Ms. Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer.
Aye.
Mr. Marino.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
And an aye from me. Karen, for your group.
Thank you. And for the Park Commission, Susanna Jewell.
Oh, hold on. Susanna is.
Can lip read.
People are just testing my management abilities of Zoom.
Anyone
Aye.
in the waiting room?
Aye.
You're an aye. Great. Thank you. And Dave Passios.
Aye.
Great. And it's an aye from myself. So we are unanimous on this decision. Welcome, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you.
It's
Great.
nice to get a unanimous decision. So there you go.
Mr.
Uh,
Longo, if I could take one quick second, just to let the folks at home know that are watching, that we do still have one seat that is vacant, and we would love to bring on that fifth member if anybody's interested. They can contact me or any of the other commissioners. We can tell you our next date if it's not online yet, and answer any questions that they have.
Thank you. And Mr. Sullivan, at your earliest convenience, please go to the town clerk's office and get sworn in, certainly before your next Parks Commission meeting.
Okay.
And the Parks Commission, I know we look forward to having another joint meeting soon about the skate park. I think that's going to be the end of the month or early next month. So we are working those details out. So we look forward to having another meeting a little lengthier than this one to discuss that issue. But hopefully you'll have another applicant to round out your board till its full capacity.
Great, thank you.
Karen, I would allow your commission a moment to adjourn.
Yep, if I could take a motion to adjourn at 7:32.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. Suzanne, are you the second?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Quick roll call vote. Let's see, Mr. Passios,
Aye.
Susanna Jewell,
Aye.
and an aye from myself. We're all set at 7:32. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. At 7:20, right of first refusal for Chapter 61 property located at 250 Howard Street, and a discussion on donation of portion of 250 Howard Street in lieu of town exercising first right of refusal. I see that we have Mr. Kibbe here from the Open Space Committee. I will unmute him. The chair of the Conservation Commission. I don't know if I'm going to unmute him in case he is going to be part of this. I know there's another agenda item as well. So that's Mr. Pease. And in case we have questions, we have our town council attorney, Adam Costa, who I'm also going to unmute. So let's go down the list to make sure. Mr. Costa, can you hear us?
I can, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pease.
Yes, I can hear.
And Mr. Kibbe.
Sure can.
Okay, so this is a property we have been discussing. I won't do too much of a summary up to this now, but we have a property coming out of chapter. The town has the right of first refusal. We have gotten an indication from the Open Space Committee and the Conservation Commission that it is a desirable property for us to own. We have, I see, let me get the Normandins also too, unmuted, sorry about that. The Normandins came before us as the potential buyers, and there was some discussion between the Open Space Committee and the Normandins, and that leads us to tonight. So Mr. Kibbe will fill us in where we are and at least begin that process.
Terrific. Thank you. Is it possible for me to share my screen and I can put up the map that I had shared with the Board of Selectmen?
I've known you long enough to trust you. You just can't hang up without giving me back host. You live close
Great.
enough, so don't make a mistake.
Thank you. So hopefully you all can see the map that I have put up here, which shows 250 Howard Street outlined in orange, and a division of the property that we've discussed with the prospective buyers, Joel and Cheshira, and the Open Space Committee. I had an opportunity after our meeting last to visit the site with Joel and Cheshira and walk the entire property. We actually walked kind of up this property boundary, up and around all the way out to the end of the parcel and back down. So we did a full tour of the property and had a chance to look at what they were looking to do and what their sort of development plans were, and also to look at the natural resources that were on the property and think about what were the most important for a conservation perspective And to remind you, the town owns this parcel here, and the town owns this parcel here as well. And one of the stated objectives that we talked about before was trying to build the connection that's into, and I apologize, I don't have a more sort of regional map to show at this time, but there's a very large portion of town-owned conservation land to the north. And so connectivity into that that block of other conserved lands and access into that block of other conserved lands is one of the objectives we're trying to reach here. And the other is protection of the Mulpus Brook corridor and other conservation values that are associated with the parcel. Joel and Gisera shared with me prior buyers and their attempts to perk the parcel. The prior buyers who were trying to purchase the property had tried to perk and failed to perk this area of the property on this near the Howard Street frontage. They tried to perk the current owners and the current buyers and the prior buyers had tried to perk areas in this old abandoned field area in here, and those also failed. And ultimately, they were able to find some successful perks suitable for septic design in this portion of the property. And so their current plan is to develop a driveway that would hug the easterly boundary of the property in this direction to access their home site in here, which would have the septic system on sort of the easterly side in this area, and the home site would be on the westerly side in this area. We looked at, there was also an existing stone wall that sort of crosses this portion of the property, and we discussed the possibility of some division of property north of that stone wall that would make good sense for allowing them to continue to purchase and buy the remaining parcel, and that they would then convey in fee, so ownership of a portion, northerly portion of the property. We presented this to the Open Space Committee at a later meeting, I think it was on September 22nd, and discussed this. And the proposals that Joel and Gisera brought forward were at a variety of distances set back from the Mulpus Brook. And what the Open Space Committee ultimately decided was the best alternative would be a 200-foot setback from the Mulpus Brook on the westerly boundary, so 200 feet back south from the Mulpus Brook on a line parallel to the northern boundary up here, and convey this portion of the property on the northerly portion that would give us the connectivity and protect the primary resource, which is the Mulpus Brook through the north end of the property. Joel and Gisera reviewed that proposal. They agreed that made sense to them, that this could come at no cost to the town, would allow them to acquire the property and move forward. They would gift that north end of the parcel, and they would do all of the survey work that's required to create that subdivision. So that's the proposal that's before you now. What the Open Space Committee Open Space Committee did vote to recommend this proposal. We thought it was a balanced approach to this outcome that would give us, what we thought was sort of the necessary part of the conservation desires here, while allowing the development to go forward and continue to keep a portion of the property in private ownership and on the tax rolls. The way forward as we see it is that we would enter into an agreement with the sellers. So Joel and Gisera would enter into an agreement with the town that would lay out all of the sort of hurdles that we have to get over here. And that once that agreement is signed, we would then be able to waive the right of first refusal, obviously reserving that right should their deal either fall apart or the material components of that deal, should they change, that the town would reserve its rights. But that would allow the buyers to then execute on the property, conduct the the necessary survey work and then convey in gift the portion of the property to the town.
Okay, thank you. So you can just make me the host back. I think we have that diagram and it was very self-contained. So just give me the hostship back.
Which I have to
I'll
figure out.
start by saying that I have no problem with the agreement. The only issue I have, and that's why we have our town council here, is that since this was flagged as a property that was of interest to be preserved by the town, I want to make sure that given the deal that was brokered, that we have all the legal documents available to do that the town is protected. And that means I'll be asking Mr. Costa himself to weigh in here, but we need to have everything in place that protects the town from not losing the property and that right by town meeting, by special town meeting. This all has to be in place, because otherwise we're going to put an article and keep an article on to buy the property. So we need all this done and the town protected. So I will ask Mr. Costa if he has looked over the documents and what needs to be done to secure that.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have had an opportunity to briefly review certain documentation that was sent to me late last week by Mr. Kibbe, and I've also had an opportunity to discuss the matter at length with Town Manager Lemieux. And so I understand, I think, the parameters of the deal as it was just described. My concern in these circumstances, and it's not the first proposal of this sort that has been presented to a municipality that I represent in the context of a right of first refusal and a potential negotiated solution whereby some portion of the property would be acquired, but not the entirety of the property, or the right of first refusal would be waived, but only contingent upon a certain type of development being pursued. And so my concern that would exist typically in that circumstance is I want to be certain that once the town votes, once the Board of Selectmen or the Select Board votes to waive the right of first refusal, that whatever contractual agreement is in place protects the town and creates the equivalent of a right of first refusal in the event that the deal as negotiated falls through. And what I mean by that, sort of in simpler terms, is once you've waived the right of first refusal, you've waived the right of first refusal. There is no opportunity to say, well, I'm going to waive it based upon this condition or that condition. And if you don't fulfill that condition, then the right of first refusal shall spring back and be in effect. And I will have preserved all of my rights, all of our rights as a community, as a board. There is no such thing. The statute prescribes a process for notice of intent to sell or intent to convert, provides a time frame within which the Board of Selectmen must act to either exercise or choose not to exercise that right. And when the town either fails to act or expressly refutes any interest in acting by waiving the right, then the right ceases to exist. And so it's easy enough to create by way of contract the equivalent right of first refusal. In fact, I've done it as recently as within the past 6 months in another community I represent in a somewhat different context, but also a chapter land property that is the subject of a development proposal negotiated with the community. And the waiver of right of first refusal was contingent upon that specific development proceeding. The town wanted to be sure that if it didn't, that the town had the opportunity then to consider for an equivalent period of 120 days, then acquiring the property. And so we entered into a contract to that effect. So I think that a contract can be negotiated on substantially those terms so that the town would be well protected and the town wouldn't lose a future right in the event that the deal as just presented to you would fall through.
Okay, so can such a deal be put together to your satisfaction? Let me ask you that.
Yes.
Okay. And can it be done and exercised, that all that documentation, before a special town meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, and Mr. Chair, to Town Council. Mr. Costa, would you mind explaining which way we should go in terms of, is this an agreement that should be worked out between the current owner, the prospective buyer, and the town? Or is this an agreement that should be worked out between the town and the prospective buyer?
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Jeffries. So there are a number of different ways that this sort of a transaction can be structured. I will tell you the way that I've done it previously, and I expressed this to Ms. Lemieux in the conversation we had about a week ago, is in the form of a tri-party or a tripartite agreement, which is an agreement between three parties, typically the current owner of the property, the prospective purchaser of the property that triggered the right of first refusal notice, and the town of Lunenburg. And that tri-party agreement would set forth the transaction as described by Mr. Kibbe, that there is, an intent to convert the property, that notice of such intent has been provided to the town, that the town is therefore on a 120-day clock pursuant to the applicable chapter, and that the town has opted to waive its right of first refusal, but that waiver is based upon and contingent upon a certain transaction unfolding. And should that transaction fail to unfold, should it unfold, that there will be a subsequent donation of property. And should it fail to unfold, then the town, effective upon a certain trigger, which could be defined in the agreement, the town would have a renewed right of first refusal in the event of a future conversion for a similar purpose pursuant to another deal struck between the current owner and a new potential purchaser.
Okay, and so my follow-up then, through the chair to Mr. Costa, is which arrangement is more beneficial to the town? I fully understand what you just said, but it sounds as if what you're saying is that a tri-party agreement is more favorable. Am I hearing that correctly?
Well, what I haven't had an opportunity to do, Mr. Jeffries, is to speak directly to Mr. Kibbe. And I think that I saw an email, I think it was in the text of the email from Ms. Lemieux that forwarded the documentation from Mr. Kibbe that suggested that maybe his recommendation was that it need not necessarily involve all three parties. And depending upon when the donation is anticipated to occur, then I suppose that could be the case. We just need to be certain. It's not so much an issue of what's more favorable. It's just an issue of ensuring that based upon how the transaction is structured, that there is no circumstance where the current owner could attempt to, and I'm not suggesting that this would be the case, I don't know the parties involved, but the current owner wouldn't attempt to sort of weasel out from the agreement that entered into by way of somehow transferring, conveying, gifting the property to a new purchaser, and therefore evading the right of first refusal or the future right of first refusal on different terms and conditions that have been agreed to. So a tri-party agreement would ensure that that's not the case, but it's certainly possible that an agreement between two parties, the current owner and the town alone, could be structured so long as there was no mechanism for the current owner to somehow convey away the property without the town's knowledge.
All right, thank you.
I wanted to just touch on something that Mr. Costa said here, and I want to be clear. I do not know the sellers. I do not know the buyers, except as they've been introduced to us on the previous Zoom meetings. And so anything I say has no projection on their intents or not. But as a elected official in the town, it is my duty to make sure that we cover the town's actions and that our desires of our boards and commissions get acted on and get preserved. And so I don't think that anything is up or not up. I think I just want to make sure that we have an airtight agreement to make sure that things unfold the way everybody said they would unfold. That is my only objective here in having the agreement. So I would open it up to any member of the board or Ms. Adams.
Sure, I have a question, and I don't know if maybe it's for Mr. Kibbe, because I had questions about the fact that this doesn't actually adjoin the parcel in terms of connectivity. It creates a corner. But that already having sort of been pointed out, I'm just curious. I do know, the 200 feet protecting the mulpus and things, but what advantage of it is to the town to have this piece where it's protected with wetlands and whatnot, whether it's privately owned or town owned? So that this patch, what does it do for the town?
Well, protecting it, having it town owned and managed will certainly protect it. Of course, there's 200 feet. The wetlands bylaws being what they are. If it's privately owned, the private owner can do certain things within that buffer. That's number one. Number two, if the town doesn't own it, we don't have public access across it. And as was pointed out at the last meeting, when we're developing conservation projects and we're basically putting the pieces of a puzzle together, and you don't necessarily get to choose which piece you get to pick first. So this is certainly an important piece to the puzzle that we're trying to put together in the northwest corner of town from a public access perspective.
Any other questions from anybody? Do we need there's nothing to vote on, I don't think, until we see those legal papers. So again, it is my intent that, okay, Mr. Normandin and Ms. Newcomb, I'll come to you in a second. It is my intent that we're going to keep the existing special town meeting warrant article on, and we're not going to waive anything until everything is in place. So that is the understood deadline, at least for me. I will vote against anything until that deadline is hit. Ms. Adams, you had another question first?
Sure. I still don't understand this piece in the sense that we already have a strip of conservation land that goes back that would potentially create the same connectivity with the missing parcel. And so in terms of tax rolls and everything, I don't really completely understand what access is being improved now or in the future. We didn't have the same maps up as last time, but it was that parcel coded blue. It's like, even if we didn't get a piece of this parcel, we have conservation land abutting this lot that would create the same connectivity. It just seems like a lot of work to acquire something that I don't think the town needs.
But it protects the watershed from anything. That means the town would own it.
The watershed's protected. There's a lot of rules for wetlands and stuff. Private owners can't damage the area either. I guess I'm just sort of caught on not completely understanding. We have so much conservation land and town land, what this piece means to even go through all these hurdles. I would just vote to bypass this right of first refusal, based on the fact that this parcel really doesn't have any connectivity that we don't already potentially have.
Well, connectivity, according to the criteria of the Open Space Committee, is not the only criteria. There were many others that Mr. Kibbe and his committee and Conservation Commission agreed existed beside connectivity. Protection of wildlife habitat. I don't have them in front of me. I'm not part of the committee, but there was at least 4 other items that were on that list.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the last time we met with this board, we were encouraged to pursue sort of a cooperative solution to this opportunity, which I feel like we've done, and we've created a very balanced approach to an outcome here that both keeps a majority of the land on the tax rolls, allows the development to go forward, and protects what we see to be the most critical resources.
Thank you. Mr. Normandin.
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much. I know that town council said that there was some other opportunities or possibilities to not include the seller as far as, an agreement. I know we have an agreement with them. The town has the first right of refusal on that agreement. And I'm just wondering what those other options may be. So that way we can act on this, maybe get this done prior to town meeting. Which I think would be in everybody's best interest at this point, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Costa? Have we lost Mr. Costa?
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yep, we still,
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Did you hear the question?
I did, and I'm not sure that I fully understand it. Is the question what the other options would be other than including all three property owners as part of a tripartite agreement?
That's what it sounded like the question was, yes. But I'll let Mr. Normandin and Ms. Newcomb agree that that was their question.
So,
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that is their question. Is there any, what are the options other than a tri-party agreement?
so Mr. Chairman, the other main option would be to enter into an agreement with the current owner that would obviate the need for the potential purchaser to join. I don't know that the fact that the potential purchaser would need to join would necessarily mean, and I wouldn't think that it means, that we couldn't get the deal done prior to town meeting. There ought to be plenty of time. This is not a complex agreement. There ought to be plenty of time and opportunity to negotiate an agreement with the current owners of the property who have noticed the town and effected the right of first refusal, and also includes the prospective purchaser in that deal. If there were no need to include the prospective purchaser, then I guess we could cut that party out. But the inclusion or exclusion of that party really shouldn't modify the timeline. And I guess I sort of wonder if the parties are all in communication and understand the way in which we're structuring the transaction, if there were some inability to get the prospective purchasers to sign off, that would cause me a little bit of concern and wonder as to why it is that that's the case. If all parties are in communication, it should be a simple transaction to facilitate the sale of the land that the seller wants to sell and the buyer wants to buy in exchange for a donation that presumably both parties are comfortable with it being made to the town.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. I was trying to keep this really as one deal between myself and the seller, and then a separate deal that is between ourselves, and the town.
And you're the buyer, sir?
Yes.
So what I don't foresee as being a possibility would be an agreement simply between the buyer and the town, because the buyer is not currently the landowner, and it's the landowner that has noticed the intent to sell or convert, and therefore triggered the right of first refusal. So the decision by the town to waive that right is a decision it makes, notice of which is given to the seller, and not given to the buyer. So in order for the town to waive its right of first refusal and to notify the seller of that waiver, the town needs to be comfortable, and frankly, therefore, so do I, in advising the town that there is no risk. And so I just don't see a way to sort of cut the current owner of the property out of the deal.
While you're thinking about that, Mr. Pease.
I would just say that I see this as a win-win-win. It's a win for the town in that we don't have to pay for the land. It's a win for the town in that we get a piece of land that's in, it's in all kinds of state, essential habitat inventories. It's a win for the town in that it increases our chance of obtaining the so-called blue parcel, which is essential to us getting access to the Northwest Town Forest. And it's a win for the buyers because, they get to build their dream house there, and still have, a lovely lot. So I'm not quite sure, so long as, we can keep, protect the interests of the town, I don't know why anyone would oppose this deal.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yes, thank you. I'm hearing the same thing. It sounds as if what Mr. Costa has just said is that we could strike a deal with the current owner, or we could strike a deal with the current owner and the prospective buyer, but that it's not advised to strike the deal just with the prospective buyer. As we're having this conversation, and my question is to Ms. Newcomb and to Mr. Normandin, is there some concern on your part about a tri-party agreement, about an agreement between the town and the seller and yourselves?
Are we unmuted? Sorry.
Yes, you're unmuted.
Other than the fact that the seller sometimes attorney was a little bit delinquent in getting things taken care of is our biggest concern. I mean, I'd rather give a personal guarantee to the town and get this all done, included everything that I had seen in the original agreement, or prospective agreement with the town, and try and get it all done prior to town meeting and just get it done and get it taken care of.
So just timeline then is what you're concerned about?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for anybody? From anybody? So I think what we need to do, if I understand correctly, is we need to see the documents before we can do anything next, unless somebody has a different idea.
I think you're right on target, Mr. Chair. I look forward to the next step being an agreement worked out between town council and a tri-party agreement.
Yeah, so I would say that, the town manager and town council, if they get with the buyers and the sellers and Mr. Kibbe and get everybody on the same page and draw this up as quickly. Mr. Costa indicated it's not a terribly complex agreement, but if we can get it done and get everybody agreed on it, I think we're all that much closer to getting this done the way everybody seems to be the way they want it. So
I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
yes, Mr. Marino.
Through you to Mr. Costa.
Go ahead.
Adam?
Yes.
Well, okay, just checking. So if the buyer's got concerns with his lawyer not responding to him in a timely manner, would you, as a representative of the town, would you be communicating with this document through his attorney, or the buyer directly and the owner?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Marino. So if the current owner, the seller of the property, is represented by counsel, then I certainly would not communicate with that party directly. The rules of ethics would prevent me from doing that unless I got permission from counsel. So I could communicate directly with counsel. Certainly, the Normandins can communicate with the seller directly and advise the seller that I'm seeking to be in contact with their counsel. I certainly appreciate that. Sometimes we attorneys get involved and we make things complicated and slow up progress. And I would like to think that there's more than sufficient time between now and special town meeting to get the deal done. Again, it's not a terribly complex agreement. Just to reiterate the point that I'm making, I want to make the deal happen, particularly if that's what the town wants to occur. But I've also heard several members loud and clear that the town needs to be protected. And my concern with striking a deal with the buyers and only the buyers is that the land is not presently owned by the buyers. It's owned by the sellers. And in order for the land to be owned by the buyers, the right of first refusal has to first be waived. And once it's waived, without an agreement that implicates the sellers, it's been waived. And I would be fearful that the sellers could then, again, not knowing them and not suggesting that this would occur, they could then go off and attempt to do as they please with the property, with the right of first refusal having been waived, potentially cutting out the buyers, so the buyers are no longer part of the equation, and there is no contractual agreement binding the sellers to the town or to a particular course of action. So I do think it's critical that the sellers acknowledge the plan of action and sign on to an agreement, simply acknowledging that we're going to be waiving the right of first refusal. In exchange, there's going to be a donation of land, and it's going to facilitate their transaction with the buyers. Again, not complicated.
Yeah, I fully understand all that, Adam. What I was trying to get at is if it alleviates the buyer's anxiety about dealing with his lawyer. I was just trying to make that connection. It was more rhetoric than anything. I know you'll deal with the lawyer, so I'm just trying to relieve his anxiety with respect to that particular issue. And thanks for being brutally honest about how lawyers can really muddy up the waters.
Wow. Ms. Adams.
Sure. I'm just looking through, is this created into did we create this into a warrant article already?
We have a warrant article for this.
Right. So
right of first refusal already, yes.
So then I have a question for town council, just in more of a, all the other details aside, just a legal town meeting procedural. Because we've placed it on the warrant, if it's left there and at town meeting, what happens if the town votes to buy it? Because it exists now as something on our legal warrant for the legislative branch to have the opportunity to vote on. If they vote yes for the purchase because we made an article already, where are we at? Haven't we given the opportunity to the town to just say yes to buy?
Sure. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Adams. So the legislative body authorizes the acquisition, but doesn't obligate the selectmen to effectuate that authority.
Okay, good. So it can't just happen. Okay.
Correct. And in fact, I've reviewed your special town meeting warrant, and there are actually 2 articles that are on there. One that would allow for the acceptance of the donation, the other of which would exercise the right of first refusal with respect to the whole parcel. I wouldn't expect town meeting to act on both of those. I suspect that by the time town meeting arrives, we've struck a deal and it's going to be one or the other. But even if town meeting did act on both of those, again, it would simply authorize the town to either acquire the entirety of the parcel by way of exercising its right of first refusal, or to accept a donation of the portion of the parcel that's been described by Mr. Kibbe, and the selectmen could act on either authority.
Okay, so that's good to know. Something can't go awry.
So is Mr. Normandin, you seem like you wanted to say something.
My question would be, is there a way that the first right of refusal could be tied to more of the ability to act on the land, the ability for us to be able to do anything on the land, different approvals within the town?
I don't understand the question.
Basically lock up our ability to do anything on the land without having done what we've guaranteed we're willing to do. In essence, a building permit, a driveway permit, conservation commission's approvals.
So as Mr. Costa already indicated, the waiver of the town's rights is not with you, it's with the seller.
Okay.
So that's why it has to be tied together, because we have to make sure the seller is agreeing that we're waiving it in this particular instance because of the agreement you've made with us. So everybody is in agreement about what the deal is.
I think, Mr. Chair, if I may ask Mr. Normandin what he's asking, I think I just heard him ask if we can include all this other stuff as well. Is that what you're asking, Mr. Normandin?
Well, just make it a condition upon, if you don't do this, then obviously you're not going to get a building permit. You're not going to get conservation commission. You're not going to get approval. You know, the other things that you would need in order to be able to put tooth in the ground, basically.
Right, but our agreement to do that with you is predicated on the fact that you own it already, which you don't. And it's predicated on the fact that we would give away our right of first refusal, which we would have to do prior to that. So that's why it all has to be, the tri-party agreement to me is the only solution to this, because it ties everybody together and protects the town and protects the seller, and it protects you too. For everybody would be held to an agreement, to me, in my mind.
Okay.
Can we take a straw poll here of the board that, I want to make sure that before we go in this, that this is something that the majority of the board is even going to support. So can we have an indication, just a quick word from every one of the board members? It's not a binding vote, just straw poll, that you're okay with us going down this, that if we get to an agreement, that people are in favor of this method. Obviously, you haven't seen the document, so I'm not asking you to do a final vote on the document, but just that this method is okay with you.
Start it off if you want.
Sure.
As I said during the last meeting, with respect to this issue, I'll just, I suppose, echo what Bob P. said. I think this deal is a win-win for the town. Conservation gets what they need. They'll probably be able to acquire that other piece of land. That'll make them whole. The land is still on the tax rolls. It's a win-win. So I support this deal 100%.
Okay. Mr. Dwyer.
I'm going to echo what Mr. Marino just said. I fully support this agreement. I think it benefits the potential buyers and it benefits the town.
Okay. Ms. Adams.
Yeah, I definitely support it. I don't see this parcel as necessary, which I've said, and so my preference would be to waive taking action on it. So either way, it makes sense because this is something that the buyers are comfortable with, and so it makes sense to me. I would support it.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yes.
Okay, and yes from me. So, all right. So let's not belabor this. I'll let Mr. Costa get in touch with all the parties involved, from the town side, the town manager and Mr. Kibbe, and from the buyer side, Mr. Normandin and Ms. Newcomb, and then the seller or the seller's attorney, and let's come up with a document for everybody to review. I want to thank everybody for your participation and for making this a very productive section of the meeting again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me do the muting part here. I think everybody has muted. Okay, good. Okay, so while we have Mr. Pease here, there were discussion on town-owned properties on current business, including 111 Mulpus Road rear and 970 New West Townsend Road rear and 671 West Street. So, Madam Town Manager, is this something that you wanted on here, or did this get asked to be put on here?
So both.
Okay.
We had a previous discussion about town properties that residents have inquired about purchasing. So that's a piece of it, including the 671 West Street, which that information has been forwarded to Conservation and to Open Space. They had some questions on that, which I forwarded responses to as well. That property itself is a town-owned general municipal use property. Years ago, the town approved at town meeting to sell off portions of that parcel. And the parcel in question that was the resident had inquired about, he's in a butter to that land, that he's wishing to purchase it. The two other parcels, 111 Mulpus Road rear and 970 Northwest Townsend Road rear, are two parcels that the Open Space Committee and Conservation are in support of transferring from general municipal use to conservation use. And those are two articles that were submitted for the special town meeting warrant by the Conservation Commission.
Okay. Mr. Pease, would you like to speak to either of these? I know you sent an email to us about it.
Well, if you look at the map of the Northwest Town Forest, there's this little parcel that's totally landlocked. On one side by the Northwest Town Forest, and the other side by Willard Brook State Park. To us, it doesn't make sense that it's under the care and control of the Board of Selectmen, this general municipal, when it's totally landlocked and surrounded by conservation land. And the same thing with 111 Mulpus Road rear. That's land that's owner unknown, and so it falls to the town. I spoke with town council about this probably a half a year ago about, could it fall to the care and control of the Conservation Commission. It's also totally surrounded on three sides by the small town forest. And I would love for the Conservation Commission to be able to put a trail through there, so people go out there and enjoy it. But I can't do that now because, or even advocate for that or put it in a plan because it's not under our care and control. And again, it's primary turtle habitat, and it's on, all of these, important habitat inventories that are prepared by the state, and so I had hoped, to take in, the Conservation Commission recommended this several months ago, and just recently, but we didn't want to move forward without the endorsement of the Open Space Committee, which we just received. And so we proposed the two warrant articles, and I just wanted to have the opportunity, to talk to the Board of Selectmen in case they had questions about it before, it popped up at town meeting, and it was a surprise to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. We have those diagrams for 111 Mulpus Road rear and 970 New West Townsend Road rear that Mr. Pease has just described to us. From my own perspective, they certainly don't serve any other purpose, and I don't see why we wouldn't transfer them to the Conservation Commission to increase the contiguous nature of the town forest in both places. Madam Town Manager.
I would, my recommendation to the board on those two parcels, I'm aware that conservation is looking at other general municipal use parcels, and they are gonna, their long-term plan this year is to take a comprehensive look at all those parcels and make a recommendation. Most likely, I would assume at the annual town meeting. So I think taking them all together as one, under one umbrella versus separating them out at a special town meeting. Especially, we are currently up to 20 articles for a special town meeting in these times, holding the special town meeting during an ongoing pandemic. That would be my recommendation, is to defer those to the annual town meeting.
Mr. Pease and Mr. Kibbe, especially Mr. Pease, since your commission is the one who submitted these, is your commission in objection to that, to taking them all up at the annual?
Well, I understand about the length of the meeting. Other than that, I don't know why we would wait. It's, I mean, I've heard lots of people look at proposals and say, well, this is a no-brainer. And so I don't know why we defer on a no-brainer until we've done a wider study of all these other parcels where, there's lots of things to be investigated. And, I don't know if the Open Space Committee, and by the way, it's the Open Space Committee investigating it, not the Conservation Commission. I don't know how long that process will take. I don't know if we'd be done by next year's town meeting. I would prefer not to wait, but I'm not on the Board of Selectmen, so.
No, I'm just asking you your opinion.
Yep.
Mr. Kibbe, your opinion.
Likewise, these are, we did talk about it, sort of that same topic at our open space committee. And, I think when dealing with all the general municipal properties sort of as a slate makes a lot of sense to me. But to Bob's point, these two are sort of fit in the no-brainer category. There's no, they're also not really at risk of any sort of other conversion at this moment. There's just, so it just seems to me like this is one we could just cross off the list and move on. But if it's the board's prerogative to wait, I
haven't even asked the board to weigh in. I just wanted to know your guys' position on it.
Yeah, and no-brainer. It seems like an easy one to move on.
Okay, Ms. Adams.
Sure, I have a few comments on this. Some of it's more based on law. I don't know if the town manager's based on me having spoken about this at the conservation meeting. So I attended the last conservation meeting. I wanted to follow along with Bright Farms and 250 Howard. It was just an agenda packed with interesting things, and you can zoom and do your dishes. So when this topic came up as a warrant article, it wasn't on their agenda. And so the warrant article was created sort of off agenda. And I spoke about that at the end of the meeting, basically just both based on, my broken record of advocating for open meeting law. I feel like open meeting law is the key piece to communication and inclusion in government. And when I heard a warrant article come up that had to do with land in the care, custody, of control of selectmen, I was like, wait, what? Because it had never come through a meeting for us. So it's very retroactively for us to learn about it after the warrant article was made. Although I completely agree with these parcels adjoining conservation land, it's more on the principle that this is a very logical one, but a warrant article shouldn't come out of nowhere. It shouldn't come from a meeting where it was not on its agenda. And so just out of principle, I have a problem with the warrant article created because there was never an agenda item to make it. So I'm not sure if that's some of the sentiment coming from the town manager, if it's completely unrelated, but the warrant article, I don't really think is valid having surfaced the way it did. And whether it's something that's logical or not, the absolute easiest way to be good communicators in government is to follow open meeting law. So something must be on an agenda. And I followed everything on that agenda. That's why I was there. And to come up surprised at a meeting of something that actually belongs to our board, care, custody, and control of land, not having been discussed by us or asked for to be discussed by us or even run by us before an article existed the way it did. I just think we could have better practice and just use it as an example of following open meeting law.
Okay, Mr. Pease. I'm trying to unmute you, Mr. Pease. There you go.
Okay, I'm reading from the agenda of our last meeting, and the agenda says under new business, town warrant discussion. I don't know how we could have brought this to the Board of Selectmen before now, since we didn't have the endorsement of the Open Space Committee, and we didn't want to move forward without the endorsement of the Open Space Committee. And if the Board of Selectmen had a meeting last Tuesday, we would have brought it to them at that meeting, but they didn't have a meeting last Tuesday. So this is the first meeting, and it's unusual in my experience where, you have warrant articles are in and there's been no meeting of the board of discussion, before they're in. So that's what I have to say.
Okay. Ms. Adams.
I just wanted to bring clarity to the fact that on their agenda, it said warrant articles, which is, very common to be on an agenda leading up to a town meeting. But what my point is for open meeting law is the properties and the specific topic wasn't listed. A topic must be listed on an agenda to be discussed. So warrant articles would be the idea. It's too generic to really follow the meaning of the law. And nowhere on the agenda ever was the addresses and the specific topic of creating the specific article. This is even since I've been a citizen, I've been really into open meeting law, and I used to communicate with a lot to the Attorney General's office to learn about it. And it's just there for communication. It's there for awareness. If things aren't on an agenda in their specific capacity, it's intended for communication. If 111 Mulpus Rear and 970 Rear or North, that if the addresses aren't there and aren't something that a citizen can see and understand and know, if you wanted to learn about it or discuss it, it has to be specific so you can attend the meeting. Warrant articles, just the word warrant articles wouldn't give a board permission to arbitrarily create anything. And it's just a nuance for me. I really believe in the laws that are meant to keep communication and openness, just a simple thing. And so I know from experience, if I followed through the fact that that's a warrant article, the Attorney General would rule against the Conservation Commission for having made it without specifying it on an agenda.
Mr. Pease.
I would just point out that the Conservation Commission had on its agenda back in February a review of municipal parcels. We went through that review of municipal parcels. We identified 5 parcels that we might want to have transferred from Selectmen to the Conservation Commission. Was in the minutes. Subsequently, at a subsequent meeting, there was a discussion that we would only try to move forward with the 2 that, are the quote no-brainers. Given that the Open Space Committee was going to undertake, this, more detailed and thorough review of parcels. I just disagree that our action wasn't, the actions that we took were not supported by the agenda, but that's just my personal opinion.
Okay. All right. So we have when is the meeting? 8:30. So 2 minutes. We have a meeting with Bright Farms to discuss the TIF. So we can come back to this, but was the intention of this agenda item to talk about all of those properties or just those 3 that were listed?
Also, the last meeting when we discussed town properties, the board had asked for more information as far as the maps and assessor's field cards. So those were all included in the board's Google Drive.
But there's no, aside from these 2, which we can revisit whether they should be on the warrant or not because of what your recommendation is, there's nothing current that needs to be addressed on the other one. So we can come back and visit those 2.
Correct. 671, I would ask the board to make a decision now that conservation and open space have had an opportunity.
Amend my statement. Those 3 that are specifically spelled out, we'll come back to. Everything else, all those other properties, we can wait for another meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Adams.
Oh, if we're coming back to it, I just had a 671 question for the town manager.
All right, we're going to come back to that because we want to try to get on track with 8:30, meeting with Bright Farms to discuss the tax increment financing agreement, the so-called TIF agreement. Do we have somebody from Bright Farms here?
I do not believe they're here yet. It would be Sean O'Neill who would be attending.
Okay.
Unless he's in the waiting room.
There's nobody waiting.
Okay.
There's nobody in the lobby of the waiting room. There's nobody in the parking lot to get to the lobby of the waiting room.
James and Margot are here regarding the amended liquor license application. That's also.
All right, let's do that. That seems like a quick one. It seems like we're going to have an Embers Lounge liquor license monthly these days. So I will open the monthly meeting of the Embers Pizzeria liquor license. Okay. So what do we have? We have an amended liquor license application to transfer an all alcohol on-premise license to Embers Lounge and Restaurant LLC, doing business as Embers Pizzeria at 84 Lakefront.
Yes.
So all my intended joking sarcasm aside, I will ask, what is the change that is being made in this request?
The manager is being changed to Margot. Initially on the application, we had put down the manager, James Exaris, and a second manager, Margot Exaris. James Exaris is the manager of the real estate. Margot is the manager of the business. The proper application should only have identified the manager of the business and not the manager of the real estate.
Okay, and the new application now, the application for reconsideration illustrates that. It has it correct. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Madam Town Manager, we have some memorandums, I believe, from you and the
executive assistant
yes,
to the board. And
to basically detail what Mr. Zaris just went over.
yes, that ABCC returned it to the board, and the Zarises were to file an amended, or Margot was to file an amended application.
Okay, so what the ABCC recommendation to us is what they are doing right now.
Correct.
All right. Mr. Jeffries, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions, actually. So the letter from the ABCC indicates that there was some confusion over communication about the initial application, and specifically what they have with the, I'm not sure who Brad Doyle is, special investigator. So what the special investigator indicated in his report to us was that in the communications with the Zarises, that there seemed to be a lack of understanding or awareness that that James Zaris was noted as being on the application. So reading this portion, I called James Zaris on September the 9th, 2020 to request additional information. James stated that he was happy to answer questions, although he stated that he has no ownership in the business. It is in his wife's name. I informed James Zaris that he was listed on the application as 50% ownership. Zaris stated that he knew nothing about this and reiterated that he was buying the building and that would be his only involvement. I recommended that James discuss the application with his wife and clarify the ownership and email me with necessary documents. James Zaris is listed as ownership in Section 6 of the application. James Zaris applied for the Articles of Incorporation, listing himself as a registered agent and manager, along with Margot as manager. James Zaris signed the vote of the corporate board authorizing James Zaris to apply for the transfer and name Margot Zaris as a manager of record. As of this date, I have not received any clarification of ownership from this application entity, and that was the trigger to send it back. So as I recalled in our conversation last with the Zarises, Mr. Zaris seemed to answer most of the questions. Certainly I don't think we had the appearance at that time that he was a landlord. Certainly on the question of, do you have other liquor licenses? The answer was yes. And all those questions again were answered by Mr. Zaris. So my first question tonight is, what is the reason for this change in ownership?
So when we purchased the property from Kenny.
I'm sorry. If I can ask this question to Margot, who's the person submitting the application.
So when we purchased the property, we purchased the whole thing together. The real estate, the equipment, the business, the liquor license. I'm going to run the business. It's going to be my business, but we did it all together. But we were supposed to separate the license and the business from the real estate. So what we did was we went back, we redid all the application, we did the purchase and sales for the liquor license and the business and all of that. And I have the business and the liquor license, he has the property, and we removed him from the corporate documents and redid all of that. And we basically resubmitted it so the application and all the paperwork would all be the same, which would be correct.
And would you mind just clarifying for me, Ms. Margot? So based on our previous interactions with you guys, certainly there was an appearance that this was a joint venture. Even tonight, previously, it seems as if there's. So would you mind just clarifying for us? Certainly, it's within your prerogative to have whoever owns a business, but would you just mind clarifying why there's a separation of this?
Because the ABC had stated that we had to put the liquor license, we couldn't purchase it all together. That had to be separate, which we did with Mr. Ricker. And so we did that.
And so if I'm clear, then this is a paperwork trail.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to run the business. I currently run a restaurant in Leominster. I've had it for 10.5 years, but it does not have a liquor license. It's a coffee shop, breakfast, lunch. And now we're going to expand, and I'm going to run Embers because that's what I do. His interest is in the real estate.
All right. And Mr. Zaris, do you have a liquor license at other locations?
Yes.
And Ms. and Margot, do you not have a liquor license at any location?
Yeah. But I've taken all of the necessary courses, and I'm ServSafe certified, CPR and first aid certified. I'm tip certified. I'm allergen certified, and I've run a very successful business for 10.5 years now.
Okay. And Mr. Zaris, James, how many liquor licenses do you currently hold?
So in other operations of my business, we own the real estate and we lease the operating business as a turnkey operation. So we would own the building, we would own the real estate, we would own all the business apparatus, the tables, chairs, the liquor license, the cash registers, and we rent them as turnkeys. So I own many facilities in Florida, Sarasota, St. Armand Circle, Leominster. I don't think there's any left in Leominster. I think whatever I had in Leominster is no longer operating with alcohol. They're not operating with an alcohol license. Westminster, I currently have one. We have multiple facilities in Massachusetts and in Florida.
Okay. And so do you, and how many? I didn't catch that answer. I'm sorry.
Counting McNally's, I think there's 5 total that have liquor.
All right. So I think I'm wrapping up my questions, but the answers seem as if, you guys certainly have businesses, you're working together. You guys, I believe that you mentioned last time you guys were married. Is that correct?
Yes, 26 years.
How many years?
26 years.
Wow. Congratulations on that. So you guys have a long-standing relationship. So it seems to me that this is a paperwork drill, that you guys together are managing businesses, that together you guys have liquor licenses, but for all purposes today, that one of you owns the restaurant and one of you owns the actual property.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? I would entertain a motion on the reapplication and the clarification of ownership and the separation of who owns what as provided in the Embers Pizzeria reconsideration application.
I'll make a motion that we approve the new application.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. All those, I'll just call a roll call vote unless there's any discussion. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Jeffries.
No.
Ms. Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer.
Aye.
Mr. Marino.
Aye.
And aye from me. Okay, you get to resubmit and do all the fun paperwork again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I see that Mr. O'Neill is now back with us. Well, not back with us, he's with us. And we will go to a meeting with Bright Farms to discuss the tax increment financing agreement. So I'm going to unmute you, Mr. O'Neill. And I don't think there's anybody else that needs to be unmuted here. So Madam Town Manager, I will let you kick this off.
Okay, thank you. So I believe it was back in early July that Mr. O'Neill came before the board to discuss the proposal, the project, the concept of entering a TIF, tax increment financing agreement with the town, the timeline for that. They were applying for the state initiative as well, and that was timing was September, so to get that application in August. So tonight's meeting is to follow up on the tax increment financing agreement. I've been working with the principal assessor, doing my own research. The town does not have any current TIF agreements, but looking at other communities, how they're structured, and the overall benefits to both the town and the company looking to do the investment in Lunenburg, and what that benefit is in terms of the added value to the tax revenues, as well as the added jobs to the community as well. So in your Google Drive is a proposal that we've come to, what we would like to present to the board is for a TIF agreement. So
If I can interrupt for a second here, just for people who may not have been with us on the other meeting and who show some interest in this.
Yes.
Can you just go over what a TIF is and why Bright Farm would be looking for one and why the town would be interested in providing one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through you. So a TIF is a tax increment financing agreement, is a means to provide an incentive for large scale investments by business and developers. The town can negotiate this agreement where the benefits of the private investment are expected to exceed the foregone tax revenue. So it's structured, it can be anywhere from 5 to 20 years in length as far as agreement, and varying amounts of discounts. So typically a larger percentage discount on the incremental tax that the town would receive from the investment is upfront, and it decreases over time until at the end of the year's length of the agreement, the full tax value is received from the incremental investment. So the town does not lose out on the base property taxes. So that whatever the value of the taxes of that existing property that they are going to build on, we still receive that base value. It's the incremental investment that's added that we would enter into an agreement in terms of length and the amount of discount received over the term of the agreement.
So in effect, we give somebody monetary and tax incentives to build bring their company here to provide extra economic input or boost and employment possibilities for the town and the region. Would that be an accurate summary?
Yes.
Okay. So now we have the actual agreement that you've put together.
Okay. So this would be structured right now to look at, there's 2 phases that Bright Farms is looking to propose. The first phase of this captures the first phase of the project, the estimated value of $10 million investment. So the proposal is a 10-year tax increment financing agreement where for year 1 would start out at 100% discount, and it would go down by 10% each year of the agreement. So in the 10th year, there'd be a 10% discount. So the town would receive 90% of that incremental value.
And without any other agreement, the 11th year would be fully taxed.
Full tax.
Okay. So
I don't know if you want to bring this up on the screen or hold off on that.
Yeah, we probably I can make you the host here. Again, for people, I only do that because my internet is spotty, to say the best. So when I share things, it doesn't always get shared. So Thank you.
If you look at, so as I said,
Well, scroll it up so we can see the whole thing. There's enough to show the whole screen here. So just scroll that up so we can see no, that's down. Scroll it up. right there. So we can see the whole. Thank you.
All right. That does have to be corrected up top. The incremental assessed value should say 10 million, not the 20 million. But, and it would be the
That means the second line should be 10,885,000.
correct.
Okay.
Right. So this projection is basically based on the estimated values. Those assessed values would need to be determined ultimately by the assessor when they're assessed. So this is using estimated values of what that investment would be, as well as it's using our tax rate right now. So it doesn't take into account inflation. So the tax rate now is $18.12. So the initial incremental annual tax for year one would be $181,200. In year one, they would receive 100% of discount on that tax, and it would decrease by 10% each year. So you see the estimated TIF savings to Bright Farms would be the $996,600. That's obviously an estimate. And the estimated incremental tax to the town over the 10 years would be the $815,400, which takes into account both the base tax, which is the current value of the property, as well as the incremental tax as the discount decreases over the years in the total value.
So the first thing that comes to mind for me is that there's no 2.5 increase in this illustration. So
Correct.
Would that be a fixed, or is that just for this illustration? Would it in actuality be subject to 2.5?
Correct. It does not. And this is just a demonstration of just an estimate. It doesn't take into account inflation. That could all be factored in.
Right. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I don't think we're taking a wild guess here that's going to be subject to 2.5. So one would think that would be in the illustration, but okay. That being aside. Okay. So we definitely get the 160. So the base property, the base tax is paid no matter what throughout the whole period.
Yes.
So the town doesn't lose any revenue by this coming on board.
Correct.
So everything that the town gains is just added to the tax revenue, just at a slower pace than it would to provide the incentive.
Correct.
Okay.
And tax increment financing agreements can be structured with different terms, with requirements of the addition of jobs, outlines what the construction will be, say, whatever it is, 560,000 square foot in new construction with equipment, whatever personal property, that could all be included in the TIF agreement. There have also been conversations. Conservation is interested in the corner of a piece of this property because it provides connectivity to the Sullivan property and the Reno conservation land off of Chase Road. That discussion has been had between Mr. O'Neill and Conservation as far as a donation of, I believe it's approximately 1.5 acres. And Mr. O'Neill can speak more to that, I believe.
Well, before we go to that, I have one question. So what are the factors that were brought into play? Is this just typical that you would just do it as a total exemption or a percentage exemption that kind of reduces over time? Is that the typical approach?
That's the general approach in the TIF agreements that I looked at. some have different, some have, maybe it's 70% 2 years in a row, or, varying different percentages. But in terms of the company making the investment, the upfront full discount is what they're seeking, because that initial investment is that in order to achieve the hurdle of building and constructing the project would be the initial investment that they're really looking for. Maybe Mr. O'Neill wants to speak more to that.
And when, I will get to him, I promise. One question I have is, year one starts when the project is completed and running, or from day one that they own the property?
From once it's fully substantially constructed. So we wouldn't be able, if it wasn't substantially constructed, we wouldn't be able to capture that new growth next year. So if it wasn't done substantially complete by June 30th of this fiscal year, we wouldn't be able to capture the value of that new construction for next year.
So substantial completion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Mr. O'Neill, I'm not, Heather, you're the host, sorry.
Okay. You want me to stop sharing? Is it all right to stop?
Does anybody need this still on the screen? Okay, yeah, you could stop sharing, I guess. Okay. Mr. O'Neill, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you all for your service. I know the select board doesn't pay great.
Oh, no, it's great. The benefits and the pay are both fabulous.
Yeah, the TIF structure is pretty standard. I did some research and found, a lot richer TIF deals for the Amazons in the world. The law allows you to go out as many as 20 years. Heather, through her superior access to other towns' information, basically, I think, identified a more typical structure. And the one that we've arrived at, just back and forth, is much more typical, 10 years, and it's phased like this. What this does for us is, it's not just bringing new business to town, but you want it to be stable, and you want us to do well so we can continue to pay taxes. And I can tell you that, unlike a business that, if we were, I don't know if they build Chuck E. Cheese's anymore, but you open the door of a Chuck E. Cheese and everybody comes in. We have to stabilize our operations. We have to get our growers accustomed to growing in this new building with this new climate. So it does take us a while to stabilize. And so this structure does give us, especially the early years, with a somewhat deeper tax support, incentive support, allows us to stabilize our operations and remain a steady taxpayer on an ongoing basis. As far as the open space, we did spend some time, not just with conservation, but walked the site with the open space committee and identified a corridor that's going to connect Reno and Saliba. So, right now, if you look at the map, they're checkerboarded. You can't reach one from the other without crossing on private property. This will make a corridor, and it not only that, but allows that corridor to go around a wetland, so you don't have to plank board a wetland. So that's another thing we feel like we're trying to add value where we can, especially. This we may be able to donate more when we finish the project. We don't know yet.
Cool. Mr. Jeffries, you have a question? Oh, Mr. Jeffries is muted.
Thank you. My only question is the length of the agreement. Is this something that can be done in 8 years instead of 10?
Oh, okay. I ask people, please don't unmute. It just makes more work for me.
Sorry about that. I have
okay.
dogs, and I was worried they're going to interrupt.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right.
I mean, in theory, it could. We're following a fairly typical structure. it winds down. So it's like, relatively marginal impact, I think, towards the latter end of the agreement. It does affect our, progressive stabilization. I think it is, we could sort of haggle over that, but I don't know if it makes, it really depends on what your, I guess I would want to know what your objective is, just to keep this as short as possible.
Yeah, I have two. I think we need to keep it as short as possible. I also know that we have an incredibly large elementary school population right now. And in 10 years, some of those kids will already be out of school, but I imagine that in 8 years, we may need to look at more teachers. And again, I'm shooting from the hip here a little bit because I haven't talked to the school committee. I haven't talked to the superintendent. I'm just aware that there's going to be there could potentially be a need. And in a meeting that I had earlier today with the in which the superintendent was a part of, she mentioned that, we knew that we had a little bit of a blimp. I think that Selectman Adams raised that to our attention maybe a year ago, but it seems to be holding steady. So it doesn't seem to be a one-off kind of situation. We may just be looking at a larger student body population, which, as I know that means the need for more money. And so I would just, if we can negotiate this deal in such a way that the first 5 years don't change, so that way it affords you the time to get that stabilization, but then we accelerate those last years into 3, I think that would be more favorable terms for the town. And is that something that you could foresee negotiating with, keeping the first 5 years the same and then taking the last 5 years and shortening it to 3?
Well, there's a way that we could, it's easier for me to make this, if there's a way to make that in essence revenue neutral, but cash flow better for you. That sounds like smart demographics to me. I think we could probably work that out. In other words, could we just take this value and reallocate it so that you're seeing a bump later on? Yeah.
Well, that's not quite what I asked. I think that I was asking if we can just shorten this down to 8 years instead of 10 years. So that way, you're at full value at year number 9 instead of year number 11. So shaved off 2 years. And instead of, and keeping it so that way year 1 still, 100, then 90, then 80, then 70. But when we get to year 5, after year 5, we start accelerating the schedule a little bit more.
Yeah, we're talking about an incremental tax difference of, it's a relatively small number. If it's meaningful, I think we could find a way to work it out. I guess I would love to try to make that. So I'll tell you how this works in other states. There's often a phase thing, and sometimes it actually goes up and then it comes down. In Pennsylvania, there's actually a complete abatement for 10 years. Zero tax payment, except on what was the pre-existing tax payment. And then you have a side agreement with the school, and the school gets paid no matter what. So I understand what you're trying to protect there, and that makes a lot of sense. I guess I would ask that if we can reallocate in a way that, again, that makes us revenue neutral to this proposal, I'd love that. But otherwise, because all you're doing is adjusting percentages. The years that you're concerned about are, you want to see in year 8, this thing is wound up and you're getting full taxes, right?
In year 9, that we're at full taxes, correct.
Okay. Yeah. So we'd be cutting off, that's about $52,000. Would you be open to reallocating that in other years, or because that's when your demographic shakeout happens?
I'm just one member. I'm just curious if this is something that we can negotiate on. I think that certainly we're very interested in your business coming to town, but I think that if we just had a slightly accelerated schedule to help us out in a couple of years, that would be really beneficial mutually for both of us.
We're community members. We'll probably have employees whose kids are in the school. We have a vested interest in that. That sounds like smart policy. We'll figure that out. So why don't we agree that this will be an 8-year term? Again, I would ask that we try to make it revenue neutral if possible, but
Okay.
at the end of the day, you control the strings.
I appreciate your openness.
Ms. Adams.
Sure. My general comments are just that we've had a goal for so long of economic development in Lunenburg, and the way our town is shaped with, not a lot of industrial land, et cetera, there's not a lot of opportunity for large scale economic development. So overall, I think this is an important project. I think having tax money is the big advantage of economic development. So it's hard to see getting less, but then it's so logical to create a partnership that can be so long-term that I think it's not picking it apart one way or another. It's diluted over time, because the benefit is so long-term to have important business in town that I just think it's an exciting opportunity to be able to take a parcel and have development in ways that, the land may not be usable for a lot of other people. So overall, I just think I've been interested in the project. I think it's different and interesting, and everybody in town, whenever we do surveys, seems to really identify with the fact that we have an agricultural background and desire. And so this just sort of suits that, like Lunenburg lettuce, I don't know. So I just feel like I understand where Selectman Jeffries is coming from, but right now, whether it's schools or anything else, things are very abstract. I think the economy could struggle in future fiscal years with a lot of uncertainty. School populations could never return to normal because a lot of people are exiting and looking for alternatives. So we don't know if everything we've been seeing will even have meaning in the future. A lot of people might stay with homeschool or stay in the private schools because they've exited. So everything's so abstract. I don't see a benefit in getting caught in the nuance. I think it's best to just be excited for the economic development. So that's just my general input.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions about the agreement? Personally, I think it's a good starting point. There's maybe some minor things to change here and there to accommodate some changes. Madam Town Manager, you want to say something? I can tell.
Just taking a deep breath.
Are you looking for any particular vote for us today, or is this a presentation?
Direction. So if it's going to be, I already figured out what it would be if it would be an 8-year. I just did the calculation. So direction, I guess, from the board.
I mean, what do you mean you figured out what it would be? I mean, take into consideration Mr. O'Neill's request for it to be revenue neutral?
Right, yes.
Okay.
Basically just crunch the numbers, right?
I mean, we know the number we'd have you looking at, it's just shy of $1 million. So you just change $1 million and allocate it over 8 years instead of 10.
No, all you have to do is change the percentages in years 1 through 8.
Right.
Yeah. So.
To me, I would say that it does, if the tax benefit from a whole number point of view, not percentage, but is the same, it doesn't matter to me when that's realized in one way or another. If we give him a bigger benefit for 8 years over time, and we get to that $1 million mark, or we get to it in 10 years, I don't know fiscally that or budgetarily it's going to make any huge difference one way or another. Personally, I don't foresee it because I can't predict what the economy is going to be 2 years from now. Forget about 8 or 10 years from now. So to me, it's the 6 of one, half a dozen of another, from my perspective. I'll let the other board members speak for themselves about how they feel about the difference between 10 or 8 years. Mr. Dwyer. For some reason, we're not hearing you.
I share your view, Mr. Chairman, that whether it's an 8-year term or a 10-year term, if it's revenue neutral, then it really doesn't make any difference at all. I'd like to come back to your point that the example TIF agreement prepared doesn't account for potential increases in assessed value. If Bright Farms would expect that the assessed value would hold steady for 10 years, or 8 years, whatever the term is, they should make that clear up front. Or we modify the TIF proposal to an agreement that shows the anticipated assessed value increase based on historical trends.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, I went into this expecting, and it's not shown. And I didn't know what your annual increase was. I think the law limits you to 2.5, right? Otherwise you go into, you have problems with the state. I live in small town Massachusetts.
Well, in order to get higher than 2.5, it would have to be a vote at town meeting and a ballot vote.
Right.
It is possible, but there's not. It can't be done.
It's a lot of brain
damage. 2.5.
Yeah. So if you're averaging 2.5, I mean, we could build that in. One of the things I would add is I went into this expecting we would live with that. Most towns, as I understand it, don't want a TIF that cuts into their base, right? So at a minimum, I was assuming that the $885,000 assessed value now, that's always going to rise with whatever your tax is. That's not shown. So you would have 2.5 compounding on that every year. We could add that. I wasn't as, I mean, I think it has to apply to the rest too, unless I'm right. So it would apply to the percentages would be that we're applying the TIF to would also increase, I think. Heather, am I wrong there?
No, so the written TIF agreement won't have this chart where it shows, it will just have the percentages and the years assigned to each year. So as the assessed value increases, it just corresponds to that percentage. So you don't have to build in any figures. It will outline the estimated value of the investment, a description of the property, if there were any equipment associated with that, the jobs that will be added due to this project going forward. And then it will give an outline of, so year 1, 100%, year 2, 90%, and so on. It will not state those numbers. This was just a demonstration of what the effect could be given this estimated value. Every year, the assessed value of the property is going to change, obviously, and the tax rate will fluctuate as well.
Right, and just to reaffirm, we don't get a reduction on the base, so that's going up every year. The only thing that's getting affected by the TIF is the incremental value. So you'll actually be applying 2.5 to both the base and the incremental value.
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Yes. So
Mr.
Mr.
Marino.
Chair, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to provide more direction as far as length of term, I can next prepare a draft TIF that we would agree or proceed with to present to town meeting.
Sure. I think that would make sense. Mr. Marino?
I think Sean actually said what I was going to say with regard to the increases over the 10-year period. But I do agree with you and Mr. Chairman and Todd. These tax increment financing agreements are pretty commonplace today, and it's this whole project I think is a win-win for the town over the next several years, where it's going to bring in jobs and development and so forth. So I I like I like that 10-year agreement. He's also obviously making concessions already with open space and conservation, to give up a piece of land, which I think is a nice addition to his proposal. So I guess that's my stand on this issue.
Okay. So I think the direction seems to be that, yes, you should go forward with the TIF agreement. If you want to have two illustrations, one an 8-year, one a 10-year, for us to look at, since you were able to whip up the 8-year in no time, it can't be that much difficulty to add an appendix with, and we'll choose which one we want to append, of course, with Mr. O'Neill and Bright Farms approval. But no, I think this is a good direction. I'm glad to hear that. I think, on basic terms, we're in agreement to how this should go. So that's good. And we should be able to hammer out the final percentages on the next step.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have anything final before we leave this? I want to thank Mr. O'Neill for attending.
Thank you all.
All right.
Be well.
Have a good night.
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 Okay. Did Mr. No, I was going to say, did Mr. Kibbe stay around so we'll just go in order here. Resignation of Mr. Dwyer from the Conservation Commission. So, Mr. Dwyer can help sign his own letter of appreciation for his service on the Conservation Commission. And of course, we should advertise that. I think already is in the paper, the Ledger this week, I believe. So that's good. And thank you for your years of service on the Conservation Commission. And we're very happy to have you aboard as part of the Select Board, Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you.
Resignation of Laura Rozaki. I'm sorry, it's a very difficult name. Rozaki, I think, from the Cultural Council. So again, we should send a letter in appreciation of her years on the Cultural Council. She put together, among other things, one of the nice arts, the Cultural Council Arts Weekend Days a couple of years ago. It was supposed to happen this year too, before the world stopped. And a resignation of Tanner Cole from the TCP Building Design Committee. That's 2 members lately. So letter of appreciation to Mr. Cole for serving on that. He still continues to serve on the planning board. That was their representative, I believe. So I'm assuming they are going to reappoint somebody from that. And now we have 2 openings on that committee, I believe. Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, I just have a question. So I think that the work that Laura was doing for our community really was outstanding. And I would like to also write her a personal letter. Is that something that I should send separately or that I should include in our general letter to her?
No, you can send it separately. There's no problem. We'll send her a board one that will be signed. But if you feel so strongly, yeah, I encourage you to send something directly.
Okay, thank you.
All these positions advertised in one way or another, or about to be advertised in one way or another? Especially, well, the TCP building is a planning board designee, right?
Yes.
Right, so that's not advertised. Cultural Council is really not elected, so we can just put it out at one of your normal. I'm sure we'll hear about it on the town manager report.
It's on there. Yes.
And the Conservation Commission needs to be advertised because it's a joint appointment.
Yeah.
Any comments on this before we go back to the town-owned properties? Okay. So, Madam Town Manager, to your recommendation, personally, I don't see, while I won't characterize it as other people did, I share the sentiment that this should be a simple vote. I don't think there's going to be much contention on the Mulpus Road rear or Townsend Road rear to extend the meeting any appreciable time. In fact, I probably wouldn't put it in the consent calendar because it's something people should be aware of, but I don't think it's going to be an inordinate amount of time and lengthen the meeting anyway. That's my own personal feeling. So they seem to be pretty straightforward what they're asking, and seems to be pretty obvious that that's what should happen to them. As far as putting it on the warrant, the comments earlier notwithstanding, it's the Board of Selectmen who gets to put it on anyway. So we would be approving its existence in any regard. If it got delayed because somebody objected or the board objected strenuously, fine, but I don't see any reason not to put it on the warrant myself.
Can I? Sorry.
If anybody, again, we can certainly vote on it. Madam Town Manager.
I just want to add to that, just to remind the board that once a property is transferred to the care, custody, and control of conservation, it's not a simple majority vote by town meeting to transfer it to any other purpose. It'd be to petition the state to make that change.
Correct. So the other property was, that's not it. We wanted to talk about 671 West Street. So I'll let you guide the discussion here. Is your question whether or not the people who are interested in purchasing part of this property, whether we should go ahead with it?
Correct, because that in your packet is a copy of the original town meeting vote. Where identified the parcels and that the board was authorized to sell to the abutters. This being an abutter. And so that town meeting vote was
that. Wow. Because this came up during your predecessor's tenure here, which was way later than 2002, but I think there was another article then, or did she refer to this one?
referred to this one. There's no other.
Yeah.
And what's the section of land that they're looking to purchase? It's a huge parcel.
No, it's a, so the piece, and this map is kind of hard to depict, but if you look at the map, it's the person inquiring, the resident is at 78 Pratt Street, which is lot 83 on that map. So it's one of the.
So they want to push their property back to match the line of 84 to 89?
Correct. So it's approximately 100 by 150 feet area.
I mean, I personally don't have any problem with it. It was offered in the past. I don't know why we wouldn't offer it now. As long as the price was the same, or, well, the same accounting for inflation.
I would get the assessed value from the assessor's office for that.
Ms. Adams?
Sure. Questions for the town manager? The parcel, because it's not depicted here, the 100 by 150 feet area, does it abut other residents that may be interested? And is there an obligation to, make it available to anyone who may want it? That's question one. Question two, does it involve the piece that has frontage?
The piece that has frontage.
Can you share with us the actual lot that's going?
It's lot 83.
No, I mean the piece of the lot from the.
So if you're looking at the map where it says 83, if you draw a line and see that back line of 84, if you draw it and continue that line up and then square it off with the rest of 83, so 83 would look like 84 and 85 and 86. They'd all be the same kind of dimension.
Okay, so it doesn't include the frontage that abuts it?
No.
That's between 82 and 83. Is that what you're talking about, Selectmen?
Yes.
No, it's behind their existing.
Behind, right. Yep.
Yeah. And is there any chance 84 would be interested in it, or is that not how it was written in terms of selling? Because I looked at the article about selling to abutters, but was it specific ones that were entitled to it, or did it intend to offer it to anybody who may abut the piece?
There's various.
Because I just feel like if 84 doesn't know of this opportunity and I was 84 or a citizen and town land was being sold, I just feel like, I mean, it's probably worthwhile to put these for sale in a way that they could even be more profitable to the town.
Was 84 a property that, lot 84, did they participate in the last time that this was advertised that it was offered?
5 pieces were sold off, so I would have to look at,
Okay.
I have to go back and look at which purchase and sales and where those properties were.
Well, can I make a statement here, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Marino, sure.
82, 83, and 84 probably would likely, depending on what the land is like behind the houses. Who knows, they may all be interested. It says various abutters. They have various abutters, so anybody can really bid on the land, but it doesn't make sense for anybody else but them, each individually, to buy that little piece. Further down, it's that if you walk out there, that land to me is essentially useless. It's all wet. But I'm sure they're just trying to increase the size of their lot, which is smart.
Yeah, I guess to Selectman Adams' question, to me, an abutter, if a piece is directly behind your own property and the abutter right next to that parcel purchase it, they would have no meaningful access to it either.
No, and abutter 84 abuts the potential property from what's been described. So there's 2 abutters to that piece.
If 84 bought it, it would be an L-shaped property is the point.
Okay.
They may be just as interested would be I just feel like in fairness to citizens, if the town owned the lot next to me and somebody bought it, I'd be like, gee whiz, I wish it was known because I would have paid more, I just feel like selling privately and to specific people without, having something just feels funny to me in the sense that I like equality and consistency to citizens. And if there's more than one abutter, I just feel like it should sort of be offered to each. That would benefit the town.
Well, the other concern, this person who's looking to buy that piece of property at 84 may have concerns about the size of his lot when he has to rebuild his septic system too. Maybe that's a concern. I'm just throwing that out there. So I don't know why anybody would buy a piece of land. It's going to be public anyway. They're going to know about it. But I don't know why anybody want to make an L-shaped lot. It's more likely that 84 is going to buy that square his lot off and make it into a rectangle.
I have a funny hunch 84 participated in this and their property. A lot of those people on that line, as you see 77, 81, 82, they all stop where 83 does. And then we offered this because, and a lot of them took advantage of it to push that line back to where it is now, I believe.
That's why I said it makes more sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know how it was offered to those people, whether we said we weren't offering people to go left or right. We just were offering them to go back. But I don't remember that 100%. We can look.
I didn't find anything in the files of that. I have the PNS, copies of the PNSs.
Okay.
If you look at the map that went along with the meeting article, what you're saying does seem true because the parcel behind 84 is grayed off from what it looks like. So it's very likely that what you're saying happened, that they did already participate in that.
I have no problem. First of all, I have no problem with the property being sold. Whether we want to say, hey, before we sell it to people at 83, if you want to check with the people at 84, I'm ambivalent about that. It doesn't truly matter to me. The property is, we've made it available. And if somebody came and approached us, I have no problem with that. But if we want to check with somebody else, I have no problem with that either.
Sell it all and buy Tri-City Marine.
So the board's general opinion is okay to proceed by approaching the abutters, because there's no requirement to do a sealed bid for this value.
Everybody okay with that approach?
I am, but I would note that I believe I know the owner of Lot 84, and it's a woman that's about 90 years old.
Relevance?
She's a really nice person, but I'm not, I can't imagine that she's interested in buying.
I don't think we should get into specifics.
What's the historical history of, if someone approaches the town and says, I want to buy some land, is it common that we then go to everyone else and say, are you interested? Are you interested? Are you interested?
No, this is a particular property that was bought with the intention at some point potentially to make a school there. And the article from 2002, turned over the property and made it available. I mean, most of the town-owned property, we don't do this to, so.
No, I understand that, but I maybe I misunderstood the conversation about extending the lot behind 83. Are we trying to go to 84 and ask if they want to buy this too? I mean, is that what we're talking about doing?
That's what Ms. Adams is suggesting that be done to make it fair to them. That's what I understand.
And I think my question then is it common that when someone approaches the town to buy land, that we go to other people and say, well, are you interested? Are you interested? Have we done that before?
I don't know that we do sell property enough to even have a historical database of that.
The West Street property, the value was so that we had to put it out for an RFP. So that was a required process. The other properties I've been in Lunenburg that we've sold have been through tax auction. And there was one article in a town meeting that didn't end up coming to fruition for, it was off the Lake Hickory Hills. It was a very small owned town piece of land.
Right. So having read that article, it's not often that we say that the Board of Selectmen gets to use it for municipal purposes or to convey the Board of Selectmen to sell or convey all or portions of it to various budding landowners. That's a very odd article for a property this large. Yeah, just everybody can take pieces as we go. So I mean, at some point we probably should rescind that, but for points right now, I don't have any. I mean, it's not against the article if we don't offer it to abutters as a last ditch offer. It's not meant to create bidding wars, but it's also not. I'm not against being courteous and asking if anybody else wants it. But.
And this property in the long term may be something that conservation and open space, the larger piece of the parcel, not this small 100 by 150, but
I think, Ms. Bidel's intent at that time was to just straighten out the line so it went as far across as we could, so we didn't have an irregular border if we ever did do anything with it. Anyway, Ms. Adams, you had your hand up. You have your hand up.
Yeah, my comment was just in terms of my thought of making people aware is not just specific to whomever lives at 84 and whether or not someone may or may not want it. It's just, I don't think there's any standard of practice because like you had said, Mr. Chair, we don't sell town land to abutters to expand their properties very frequently. But as we have a lot of other properties that I guess open space is going to be looking at, there may be the potential to offer them. I think it's just better to be open in our offering. And it's very, very likely to turn out exactly as intended, that there's only two people who abut it and one person has interest. So I don't think there's any harm in setting sort of a best practice just to, when we're selling it, make people openly aware. So then somebody doesn't say, wait, what? Who sold? The town sold, somebody land? Why didn't they tell anybody? It just feels better to do everything as open as possible, even if in this specific instance, it may not make sense to someone. That's my comment, is just sort of setting up our standard procedure. If multiple abut it, they should know.
So without objection, unless there's objection, I would say that, Madam Town Manager, you should proceed with trying to sell it. And if you want to alert the people at lot 84 and make them aware of it, that makes sense, and that's fine.
I do object, and
Okay.
as I was saying earlier, before I was cut off, that as a selectman, if I know a member who potentially could be interested in this land, and no one else knows that this is for sale, and then they buy it, it's the appearance of wrongdoing. So that's why I brought up that point earlier, but I didn't finish that thought. I'm much more in favor of us sending a notice to everyone who circles this property and letting them know, hey, that there's an article out here that was passed 18 years ago, that if you want a piece of this that abuts your land, that you can purchase it. And that way we cover ourselves, we make everyone aware that they can do this. It might trigger some more revenue for us, but it certainly doesn't seem as if we're giving anyone any kind of, favoritism. So, I brought up my own knowledge of this to kind of just bring to the forefront that there could potentially be the appearance of wrongdoing if we don't.
I totally disagree. There is no appearance of wrongdoing because the article exists. Whether it's 10 years ago or 18 years ago, the article exists. It's open to everybody. If somebody happens to know it, that's within there. There's no wrongdoing. Even the impression that it's wrongdoing is a little bit distasteful, I have to say, because everybody has equal access to that. If somebody knew it, then fine. If we want to alert the abutters, in this particular case, one abutter, because there's no one else who abuts that 100 by 150 piece of property, fine. But we don't even have to do that because this exists on the books. We don't have to advertise that we're looking to get rid of property. This person knew it. Maybe they knew it from before when we did this 8 years ago or 9 years ago, and they couldn't do it monetarily then, and they want to do it now. I mean,
I can tell you how they knew it.
What?
I can tell you how they knew it because their neighbors, theirs had taken advantage of the previous pieces that were sold off.
Right. So that's how they knew it. But so people know about things. I mean,
and some people may not, but we can.
Yeah,
just,
you're right. Some people may not. I agree. Ms. Adams, is there something new here?
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of confused because I agree with Selectman Jeffries that like notifying any possible abutters, and I feel like that's what we're recommending. So I feel like we're on the same page, but so I'm confused that it feels like maybe we're not.
No, he doesn't like the fact that we're notifying an abutter instead of everybody who abuts this whole parcel, which is, I don't know, 35, 40 properties.
That's 55 cents per stamp. I mean, it's not a lot of money.
I don't see the need personally to do that. If there's any other members, if there are votes to outdo this, we'll take a vote. But if anybody wants that position, please let me know right now. No. So let's just go forward.
My hand is raised. Did you see? I mean, my virtual hand.
Okay. So there's two people. I'm assuming that there's three people who are fine with the way it is.
Well, what I was just going to say is that if you read the article and you go back to the intent of it being approved and you see the parcels grayed out, it was to make contiguous land, and it spelled out for the purchase, for people to expand their lots. And so if you look at the article, then this opportunity only applies to people who abut it. I think it'd be very strange to open up the opportunity for somebody to buy a landlocked piece of land. It doesn't go along with the intent of the article. So I think notifying any abutter is just the simplest way to not get it overly complicated, but still be fair.
Okay, I don't know where you came out on that.
I'm with you in the fact that
all right.
Notify the two people that abut it, but the intent of the article wasn't to make it globally available. It was for people who abut these parcels to have the opportunity to buy them.
Agreed.
Two people.
Okay, well, let's just go forward with that then. Madam Town Manager? Okay.
Have nothing.
Discussion on Halloween. So everybody on social media is on fire wanting to know what the town of Lunenburg and the Board of Selectmen want to decide about what we usually establish as trick or treat hours, especially now given the pandemic, and what they are looking for guidance about what is allowed and not allowed and what times are available and not available, etc. So we should come to a determination, because whether you agreed in the past or not, whether we should dictate when trick-or-treating hours are, we have. So by de facto, we've been doing it, and we probably at least owe it to the townspeople to make some kind of determination as a board about how we want to proceed with this. So I will open up the floor to members if they have any strong feelings or have something they'd like to see done one way or the other. Okay, I will start out with what I believe. I believe, first of all, that I think that what we've done in the past outlined a courtesy to when we would predict when people should do it, so that public safety was notified when there would be people, especially children, around on streets, etc. But I never found it as something that was necessarily dictated by the force of law, that people couldn't go trick-or-treating. Now, given the issues of the pandemic right now and the guidance that we've been given by, federal, state, and local Board of Health, I understand a lot of the risk factors that people are talking about, large groups going door to door, etc. There is some advisement. There's even a letter from our own acting chief who advised against it in accordance with some of the guidelines that were issued by the Massachusetts Board of Health that were propagated to us and sent to us by our own Board of Health. My personal stance is that it is certainly a non-essential event, but that being said, the parents who have children of this age and the people who may participate in giving out Halloween trick-or-treats certainly should have the freedom to make their own decisions whether they're going to participate. If you decide you're not going to participate, kids don't come to your house. If you decide for your children that you don't want to participate, that's certainly fine. But if there are people who find ways, and there's all different ways of making this socially distanced and reduce, recommending people reduce groups, I am not one to say that we're not going to allow that, and nor would I vote in favor of anything that as a municipality voted against it. I think people can exercise their own judgment for themselves and their families on either end of the trick-or-treat arrangement to decide who wants to participate and who doesn't. I would offer guidance about what I think the times should be, but that's usually a daylight time that we want to send out, that we don't want people around at dark, regardless of any other health issue. I think it's dangerous for people to be out after dark. So I would issue a time frame, but I am not in favor personally of saying that we are not allowing trick or treat to happen in town. That's my own personal feeling. Ms. Adams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that was very well stated in what I was prepared to say, in the sense that, first of all, I feel uncomfortable exercising that type of jurisdiction over a holiday and over people visiting each other's houses, just in a generic sense. Of course, somebody can go knock on their neighbor's door. I know it's much more than that. My thought process is it's very easy for people to not participate as trick-or-treaters. It's very easy for people to not participate as a household. So there's no obligation ever to participate. And I think in general, people are taking rules and hygiene and everything very seriously in terms of going back to school, in terms of starting to work on conducting sports and other activities. So with other things being open and active, I think people and parents will use Purell and take things seriously. It's mostly conducted outside. And so I think it is sort of a bit of freedom at this point that people will find their comfort level, and that even if we didn't set a time, I think people will choose to participate. So I think it's best to create normal structure. And then my only last other comment in terms of optics is we have municipally sponsored safe events for people to participate in, like trunk or treat or pumpkin carving through the Parks Commission. And so I'd have a real problem offering municipally sponsored events that bring people together safely and then canceling as a municipality an event to celebrate the same item. It would be too inconsistent for me. We've already announced municipal Halloween events, so I feel that I would not have the authority to make new events and cancel old ones. So I'm in support of just setting the guidelines and maybe issuing a statement on the town page to encourage following, social distancing, hand hygiene. But I really think people have taken it seriously, but some people need the social, emotional welfare of participating in some normalcy. So that's my input.
Cameron, I have a comment.
Mr. Marino.
Look at it this way. It's one of the few activities where people actually volunteer to wear a mask. No.
I would be strong. I would say that while we're not restricting it, we would encourage everybody to follow every single guideline that's put forward, that people should be in small groups. Those groups shouldn't bunch. They shouldn't get close to houses. Houses who want to participate should devise unique ways to keep distance. There's people who are showing PVC candy shoots and everything. I mean, you can see it all over the news and all over social media. So, I mean, I agree with you, Mr. Marino. I think that it should be very strong. It should be very clear that we encourage all of those guidelines.
And coming up with those unique things, I think it makes people feel good. The endorphins go up. A lot of people are feeling very anxious and depressive with the loss of normal routines, but I think having something to work on, it'll be meaningful to people. And I do think people have been very respectful towards each other and the rules. And I think out of respect for that, letting people have the opportunity, to me makes sense. And my question, we usually set it's usually 6 to 8. Is that true?
I was going to ask that if we could look that up when that is.
6 to 8.
Yeah. So I would recommend the same thing. Mr. Marino, you had more, you said.
No, I mean, look at the dynamic anyway. I'm not trying to downplay the whole COVID-19 issue, but most kids today at trick or treat, I mean, there's a huge percentage of them, they're with their family members. A lot of them in their car, they drive around in cars these days. They don't walk like we did when we were kids. So it's not like you got large groups gathering together. It's usually small groups and it's usually families, and they're driving around to houses. I don't know how that plays into, handing off candy or whatever in terms of, coming in contact with any virus or whatever. But
sure,
yeah, I don't see too much wrong with it, quite honestly.
Okay. Other two members, any comments?
Sure, Mr. Chair. I agree that it's an activity that can be done safely. I just think people need to keep in mind the state and CDC guidelines for social distancing and sanitation that people have spoke about previously. I think it's we need to emphasize that when people are going to houses, that they respect the houses that have their lights off, as they typically do, but I just emphasize to respect people, especially people who are at higher risk for COVID. But as long as people adhere to the guidelines and respect others' wishes to participate or not, then I don't have an issue with it.
Okay. Mr. Jeffries, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I am going to abstain from this conversation and the vote. I do not participate in Halloween for religious reasons.
Okay. To your point, Mr. Marino, if we encourage everybody to dress as a health professional, they would already be dressed when they left their house. So,
Right, clothes, masks.
Ms. Adams, you had another comment.
Sure. I think folks that have become extremely concerned, there's a lot of, so for example, there'll be clumps of people because like I exist as a clump because I'm a family. So if people see people walking around together, it doesn't mean they're disobeying social distancing. So, I like to just put that in terms of making sure that people aren't hyper nervous and judgmental, because when I walk out of here, it's 5 people, and we walk together because we live together. And so just as people see it, if they say, oh, Lunenburg and they didn't social distance or didn't this, for people to just be cautious before they judgment that a big group walking together might have just come out of the same house. My twins get yelled at a lot at the middle school going down the halls on their in-person day to separate. And they look and they say, we're twins. I don't need them to socially distance. They can't. So as we follow the rules, I think we also have to start heading in a positive direction where some of the judgment or accusation goes away, because, some of the social norms that exist within families are that social distancing isn't a part of every human's abilities. People will be walking in clumps, their children. I would hope. I wouldn't want my child 6 feet away in the dark. Safety first. Emily's down the road,
No, that has nothing to do with the pandemic. That has to do with every Halloween then. So, all right.
So what I'm saying is I don't want to recommend social distancing. I think people get it because you should be really close to the people you're out with in the dark.
Fair enough. All right. So it sounds like we have a consensus, maybe, with one abstention, I think a unanimous vote that we would do this. I'm not going to take a vote, but just say that we'll do the normal 6 to 8, and we strongly recommend that everybody participating, both on the trick-or-treating receivers or the houses participating, follow all health guidelines provided by the federal, state, and local authorities.
Can I just add to that one little comment, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman? The CDC guidelines, they see it as a moderate risk in many cases, but one of the things that they recommend is that if a family is going to give out candy, to put the candy in individual little bags so that they're not dipping their hand into a bucket or something like that. Makes a lot of sense. I see that.
Yeah.
That's
not even good during regular Halloween years. That's not a good idea. I agree with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. So
it's been a long time since I went trick-or-treating, and even then we weren't allowed to keep anything that wasn't wrapped in it by itself, and that was many years ago. So
yeah,
I lobbied hard as a kid against that rule, but I did not win.
There's someone in my neighborhood who every year gives out carnations. It's really cool. People walk with flowers.
Okay. Next, vote to sign a bond anticipation note renewal. So that should be in our drive. And if you can give us the details on that, Madam Town Manager.
Yes. Okay. The finance director put together a short little synopsis of the bond anticipation renewal note. This is for the Saliba property and the ladder truck. The Saliba property purchase was Article 6 in the November 12th, 2019 special town meeting. And the ladder truck was Article 6 from the May 5th, 2018 annual town meeting. So the Saliba property, this ban renewal is for $225,600 for the Saliba property and $384,396 for the ladder truck, for a combined total of $609,996 at an interest rate of 0.59%. And this renews next year on October 14th, 2021.
When do we anticipate it being an actual bond to go out for final financing?
It will not be a bond, so we have 3 more renewals. It's paid off.
Oh, okay. So there we go. All right.
So do we have commitment from at least 3 of the board members to come into the office tomorrow to sign the paperwork? It has to be done by tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow
Have a
morning,
preferred
what
time?
like before noon, or is like
Yes, 'cause
tomorrow?
it has to be, FedEx has to come up and pick up the paperwork by early afternoon.
I could do that.
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah.
As well.
Thank you.
Do we need a vote on this?
It never hurts to have a vote.
Okay. All right, we're a little rusty on this, so I'll entertain a motion on this ban renewal.
I'll make a motion. I'm sorry. Mike.
No,
Go ahead, Jim.
Either one of us can do it. I move to approve the ban renewal.
Do I have a second?
Second it. I'll second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Adams. Mr. Dwyer.
Aye.
Mr. Marino.
Aye.
And Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
And an aye from me. Okay. And please, everybody who agreed to sign, please make sure we come in and sign it.
Where is that? At the clerk's office?
No, upstairs in the Selectmen's.
Selectman's office, yeah. And when does Elaine get there?
8.
Okay, so, all right. So there's no way I'm getting there before 8, so don't worry. So, approval of August 11th and August 18th, 2020 minutes. Unless anybody has any objections, I would entertain a motion for those minutes that we received several weeks ago.
I move to approve the August 8th and 18th meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Roll call vote. Ms. Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer.
Aye.
Mr. Marino.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
Aye for me. Last week I signed several warrants, an accounts payable warrant in the amount of $970,902.40, a payroll deduction warrant in the amount of $30,057.19, and a payroll warrant in the amount of $842,978.23. All right, then we have the signed November 3rd, 2020 election warrant. Is this for all of us to sign, or is this an authorization for me to sign?
We need at least 3 members of the board to
Okay,
sign.
great. Okay, so whoever's coming in tomorrow, if we agree to this warrant, and I find it hard to believe we won't agree with this warrant, but we can sign that election warrant as well. Anybody have any questions on the warrant? We have the warrant in our Google Drive. Thank you for whoever scanned it in sideways, so I have to like tip my head sideways to read this.
I think because it was on legal paper. That's why.
All right, so it has the eight positions that are up for ballot in November. and the 2 ballot questions. Right? Yep. All right, so I'd entertain a motion that we agree that to sign this, and then to, Ms. Adams, you have a question or a comment?
Is it to sign the warrant articles, you're saying?
Yes.
The November 3rd.
For the November 3rd, 2020 election warrant.
The election warrant. Okay.
Yes, yes.
That's it. Okay. That's what I wanted to check. Thank you.
So I'd entertain a motion that about these signing them.
I move to sign the election warrant.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Another roll call. Ms. Adams,
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer,
Aye.
Mr. Marino,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and I for myself. I'm just writing a post-it for myself.
I didn't mention earlier, but I did tell Elaine that I could be in tomorrow morning at about 8:15.
Okay, well, if we get more than 3, that's good. It'll almost be like old times. Almost. All right, action items. Anybody have any action items? Anybody? Yes?
I mentioned I'd like to put our goals on an agenda, like,
Okay.
mostly old primary.
Yeah, I'll work with the town manager and find out when there's a good time for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Committee reports.
Yes, I have a committee report.
Go ahead, Mr. Jeffries.
TC Passio's design committee had 2 meetings, I think, since we last met. So the focus of the TCP design committee over the last couple of weeks has been to continue to meet with community organizations to get a better understanding of what the community needs are in town. So that way, as we look at future uses for the TC Passio's building, we can incorporate many of those ideas into it. So, we had a lot of outreach from different organizations, the Boys and Girls Clubs looking for expanded space. We had the Lions Club mention that they're currently using the 2nd floor of the safety building, that they're looking for more accessible space for storage. We had some groups come in, the Grange Club came in. I believe there was another group that came, a couple community members spoke to the need to have space, that the town does a lot for children, that we do have some programs for seniors, but that people between the ages of 18 and 55, that there's not a lot of space for them or opportunities for them in town. And so one of the things that they requested was like community kitchen, for there to be community meeting space. So these are all things that were considered into the design. So today, where we are at now is the TC Passio's design committee prioritized programming needs in the building. Based on all the needs that we've heard, we're certainly not going to be able to accommodate everyone. And so, priority 1 was identified as being the town and town offices. Town offices need substantial storage space. Schools, as the school department has superintendent's office. Currently in the TC Passio's, they were looking at trying to inhabit other buildings, town hall, the current Boys and Girls Club Ritter building, and there's a strong request from the school and the town to be co-located. The schools also have substantial space needs and storage needs. The next priority that we came up with was PAC. PAC is looking, the ideas for the building to all conference rooms to be hardwired. So that way PAC, if they're located there and if there are meetings inside the building, that those can be broadcast live and more easily recorded from one control room. So there was PAC was the 3rd priority. The 4th being all school related programs. There's currently aftercare program called ACE for the transitional age of 18 through 21-year-olds who are still part of the school system, getting additional life skills. And then there's also the preschool and after school program that a lot of parents take advantage of. That was the fifth priority was the Lions Club. Sixth priority was listed as the commercial kitchen, and the seventh priority was listed as the Boys and Girls Club. And that was based upon the multiple needs that were there. We also provided some feedback based on the design that was presented about how we can better utilize the space. So this priority list will be transferred over to the architects and for them to work out these space needs and see if we can better accommodate all of these requests. And at the next meeting with the architects, we should be reviewing them. The committee is preparing a report for the upcoming special town meeting.
Thank you. I will make a comment, after following this for the last, few months, that it harkened back that like 2 years ago when the design came out, they showed town hall being put in there and the architect was recommending that a whole wing be destroyed. That was, thank God, voted down by the TC Passios Building Committee or the Building Reuse Committee at the time. And at that point, the school, which had total ownership of the building, had given over the building to the town. They have rescinded ownership. Now, 2 years later, we seem not to have enough room for the things that people that want to be in there. And it's really kind of incredible how much the school request from that building, from giving it over because they had full ownership of the building, now has continually grown to a point where we're looking at some groups, a la the Boys and Girls Club, that now are the seventh priority when they have no expansion capabilities where they are. So I hope that the building design, the design committee and the architect is looking at places like the Ritter or the current Boys and Girls Club for other of those office spaces that don't need to be in the same building. They haven't been in the same building forever. So some of those decisions, I hope they're looking at the bigger picture, because I think that, I don't want to preempt it saying they're not. I'm just saying I hope they do look at the bigger picture, because some of their decisions are going to impact a lot of different places and a lot of different organizations. So
the limitation of the committee, response to that, Mr. Chair, the limitation of the committee is that we can only consider the TC Passios building. So, there's no charge to consider the Ritter building. There's no charge to consider any other building in town. So it's just looking at the TC Passios building with the wording of the article, understanding the charge. And it's again, the committee today, the priority list based on town needs, school needs. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you in principle, but it doesn't change the fact that the school departments need an office and that they're currently using the TC Passios building, and that there are currently aftercare programs in the TC Passios building. And so the plan that's being developed is keeping the buildings, the uses that are currently there, because there is no other location for them at this time. And there's no other committee looking at relocating them at this time. So it's keeping them there and then incorporating the needs of the town as well as community organization. Certainly, I think that every member would like for the Boys and Girls Club, even though they are not a town entity, but everyone would like the Boys and Girls Club to certainly be a part of this plan. And every plan, including the current plan we're working off of, includes the Boys and Girls Club. The problem is that we can't meet the needs of the town, and we can't seem to meet the needs of the school, keeping them there. So the prioritization that the committee is going to now is going back to the architects and saying, let's focus on these priorities and let's see what additional spaces we can have there to make this work. I think that there's a commitment to trying to provide additional space for the Boys and Girls Club. They've made it really clear that they're outgrowing their current location, but there's only so much square footage in the building, and we just can't do it all. But it's a very thoughtful group. There's a representative of the Boys and Girls Club. A member of the design committee happens to also be on the board of the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club has representatives at every meeting, and they have for the last 4. So I think that there certainly is a big influence to try to accommodate the need. There are a lot of parents in town And I think we all understand the importance of the schools, the after-school programs, and supporting our youth however we can. And that's the committee. A lot of them are parents, and I think all of them but me are. And so it's really, I think that everyone prioritizes these needs. It's just, trying to make it all work.
I appreciate that. Ms. Adams.
Sure, I have a couple follow-up things with the TCP Building Design Committee. One is that one of the vacancies, I believe, for Mr. Mackin is a member at large. Does that come back through us to appoint as we originally did? And is that one advertised?
It is advertised. We've received no applicants.
Okay.
Well, there was one applicant, but he checked off a couple boxes, and after speaking with he couldn't make the commitment to the time.
Okay, and then my other comment, just because I'm on a open meeting law kick, because it's like my favorite thing, I guess, tonight, is I watched one of the meetings on YouTube. I think it was September 21st, and it lost its quorum. And it kept meeting for quite a long time. You made them aware they lost their quorum, and then they still kept meeting. I know they've apparently remedied the fact they didn't take minutes for the first year, which is a huge public records law violation. This is something we created, so I feel it important to discuss whether or not it's functioning well. If a quorum's lost, particularly once somebody is aware of it, legally the meeting needs to end, and I was really disappointed that it continued.
I'm not familiar, Ms. Adams, with what you were referring to. I don't recall them losing a quorum. I do recall asking a question about if we had quorum.
I don't think you were there.
But at the meeting on the 21st, I believe I was there for the first hour, and then I had to step away from that one for a work meeting. But when I left that meeting, there were 4 members there.
Rather than debate it, Mrs. Lemieux, can you please say that I'm accurate? I hate to always be pointed out that I'm wrong when I'm just specifically quoting from a meeting I watched.
It was after you left, Selectman Jeffries, that the quorum was lost.
Got it. So I wasn't part of that. Okay.
When a meeting loses quorum, I was not, and I could be mistaken. I haven't reviewed the more open meeting law, in detail for a while. I know you obviously can't take votes, but I didn't know that you couldn't, in an open meeting, still have discussions about things because you didn't take votes. I'm not familiar with that. I know that just got cited in Leominster, actually, when the mayor got deserted by the whole school committee and was determined to still keep on with the comments from the audience for another few hours. He cited the same thing. So
it's just not legal for a group to meet without a quorum. That's just part of basic law behind meeting. There has to be a quorum. So once it's gone, there can't be a meeting.
At the point they lost their quorum, there would no longer be a meeting of the public board. And any discussion that led to deliberation at a future meeting, that's what would be called into question. So.
Fair enough.
I think it was over an hour. It was a substantial amount of time, not just like 10 minutes.
We will. What'd you say was the 21st?
I think so. I'd have to go back. I watched it on YouTube. I feel like it was.
Okay, so it's on YouTube. It was recorded. Okay. Okay.
What was the other concern that Selectman Adams mentioned besides that? Minutes?
Yeah.
No, I said I know that had been remedied, but they went about a year without minutes. So I was just making a statement of fact.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Special town meeting warrant article review. Are they all, this is the whole list now?
This is the whole list. So from now until October 20th, October 20th is when the board will have to make their final votes on whether the language of the articles, as well as whether you're going to remove any, and your recommendations. So they have been reviewed by town council. You have 2 drafts, one with his comments included and one cleaned up version. And I don't know how you want to go through this as a board. We've gone over a number of these at previous meetings.
Yeah, well, given the hour and the fact that we still have an executive session, I think we need to put this first on. I mean, we have till the 20th, right? So we have 2 meetings to decide these. So let's put it first on next week's agenda, unless we have some quick licensing or any appointments first. But let's just go over those and make our recommendations. Then.
And invite conservation regarding the 2 articles they have.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, well, I see stormwater takes up the lion's share of this. Okay.
Yes.
So we're up to
20 minutes.
Well, I don't have 20. I have letters.
Well, if you count them up.
Okay, which I didn't.
You'll need more than 1 meeting to read that article.
Yeah, I think we got to start now. All right. So that's gonna be highest priority to get those done. All right, town manager report and COVID-19 update.
Okay, I'll start with the town manager report. Announcement of existing vacancies. There's 1 vacancy in the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 vacancy on the Conservation Commission, 1 vacancy on the Cultural Council, 1 vacancy on the Historical Commission, 1 vacancy on the Parks Commission, 1 vacancy appointed by the Select Board and Town Moderator for the member at large on the TCP Building Design Committee, and 1 associate vacancy on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Anyone interested in any of these positions can find the application forms on the town website and complete and return to the Board of Selectmen's office.
Or the Select Board's office, yes.
Yes, I have it. Yeah, hard to get adjusted.
Yep.
Department updates from the finance director. Due to the reporting requirements from the CARES Act funding, the town submitted a reimbursement request for in the spring. The finance director had to submit a detailed report to the Division of Local Services on September 25th. I know she's been spending a significant amount of time with all this reporting and tracking of all these expenses, both for the CARES Act and for FEMA. She's also working with the police and fire public safety coordinators to submit a FEMA reimbursement request to MEMA by October 15th. She submitted the balance sheet for fiscal 20, and the projected free cash amount is anticipated between 1.6 and 1.7 million. The assessors, the principal assessor reported that motor vehicle commitment 5 is going out, and she submitted new growth to be certified. And it was certified on October 1st at $308,732. This is $135,332 more than our estimate that we used at the annual town meeting. So thank you to Sue Byrne for that. The Board of Assessors voted to terminate the contract with Tyler Technologies for assessing software in contract with Vision. I worked with town council on the termination letter sent to Tyler Technologies, crafted the RFP that was used to solicit proposals for assessing software, and finalized all the contract documents with Vision. The treasurer collector closed out all of the end of the year Department of Revenue reports. She's still working on tailings, which that is on the town website as far as all the outstanding checks. So that's a long multi-year process for closing all those outstanding checks. The treasurer collector is anticipating holding a tax title lien sale in the spring. DPW, the paving season is wrapping up for the calendar year, and the underground fuel tanks are expected to be removed in a couple of weeks. So that project is progressing. The police The 4 new reserve police officers have started, and the newest full-time officer in the academy will graduate at the end of October. The acting chief has been receiving a number of inquiries from residents about adding 25-mile-an-hour speed zones. The fire chief reported that call volumes are back to normal as they were down during since the beginning of the pandemic. The newest engine was delivered to the dealership and is getting outfitted currently. Council on Aging. The Council on Aging director reported that the police department helped hand out lunches for their drive-through events, and the fire department will be at the senior center during Fire Prevention Week. Outdoor programs under the tent are going well, and the senior center's numbers are up, and Meals on Wheels is back to delivering 4 days a week. Land use. The planning board is currently updating their approval not required process to contemporize with the septic regulations. The new unit at Tri-Town is currently under construction and is expected to be done this fiscal year. So that's additional new growth we'll see next year after the new year. And Bright Farms will be wrapping up with the planning board at the end of October, the beginning of November. And the Conservation Commission is looking, we discussed this earlier, for Bright Farms to donate 1.5 acres of land on the northeast corner that would provide access from the Sleeper property to the Reno conservation land off of Chase Road. PAC, the public access manager, reported that the equipment to enable hybrid public meetings has been installed and has been tested out at the town hall. PAC is working on a story time series with the library, and 4 episodes have been recorded to date, so you can see those on YouTube. And they're also working on building up programming on the educational channel. They've been working with the architect for the TCP building design on space needs, and will be visiting other public access studios to see their layouts. For meetings, events, and other announcements, the school committee has a meeting on Zoom on Wednesday, October 7th at 6:30 p.m. Conservation has a meeting on Zoom Wednesday, October 7th at 7 p.m. I will be attending the Finance Committee meeting on Zoom on Thursday, October 8th at 7 p.m. Council on Aging is meeting on Zoom on Tuesday, October 13th at 9:30 a.m. The Sewer Commission has a meeting on Tuesday, October 13th at 5 p.m. on Zoom. Open Space has a meeting on Zoom on Tuesday, October 13th at 6 p.m. And the special town meeting, just to remind people, is Tuesday, November 17th at 7 p.m. And there will be a flu clinic on Wednesday, October 14th from 3 to 6 p.m. at the high school, and persons 60 or older will be given priority from 3 to 5 p.m.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions on the town manager report? Seeing none.
I'll move on to the COVID-19 update. As of October 2nd, there are 81 confirmed positive cases in Lunenburg and 1 death. Updates from the state. As of October 1st, there are 130,461 COVID-19 cases, 9,265 deaths, and 2,252,361 patients have been tested to date. We are now currently in step 2 of phase 3. The governor announced on September 29th that through executive order number 51, effective Monday, October 5th, lower risk communities will be permitted to move to step 2 of phase 3 of the reopening plan. All other communities will remain in phase 3, step 1. Governor Baker also issued revised gatherings order and industry specific guidance and protocols for a range of phase 1, 2, and 3 businesses will also be updated. Lower risk communities are defined as cities and towns that have not been a red community. That's with an average daily case rate of greater than 8 per 1,000 over the last 14 days. In 100,000, sorry. In any of the last 3 weekly Department of Public Health weekly reports. Moving to step 2, phase 3 affects the following sectors. Indoor performance venues will be permitted to open with 50% capacity with a maximum of 250 people. Outdoor performance venue capacity will increase to 50% with a maximum of 250 people. For arcades and indoor and outdoor recreation businesses, additional step 2 activities like trampolines, obstacle courses, roller rinks, and laser tag will also be permitted to open, and capacity will increase to 50%. Fitting rooms will be permitted to open in all types of retail stores. Gyms, museums, libraries, and driving and flight schools will also be permitted to increase their capacity to 50%. In terms of the revised gatherings order, that's Executive Order number 52 that went in, that was issued on September 29th. The limit for indoor gatherings remains at a maximum of 25 people for all communities. Outdoor gatherings at private residences and private backyards will remain at a maximum of 50 people for all communities. Outdoor gatherings at event venues in public settings will have a limit of 50 people in step 1 communities and a limit of 100 people in lower risk step 2 communities. And that's all my updates related to COVID-19.
With that revised gathering, I hesitate. Oh, Todd got kicked out here. All right. I hesitate to bring this up, but I'm going to anyway. That is, does this alter or change the fact of when we can potentially have these meetings at Town Hall? Especially with the news from the PAC that the mixed meetings are possible and that we can meet potentially in person?
No, because we fall under office space, so we would still have to follow those guidelines. And it's
okay. So we're not an indoor gathering?
No.
Okay. I don't know that I understand the difference, but maybe at 10:22 at night, I don't want to understand the difference between an indoor gathering and an office space, but I'm sure there's a difference. Okay, so we can't. Ms. Adams.
Oh, I was just going to say, yes, I agree with you that I would like more clarification on office space versus gathering, because a governmental meeting is not an office activity. So I don't know if it's falling under something different, because it would be nice to at least start to conceptualize it. But the reason I raised my hand is the hybrid technology being worked on. I think it's really awesome. I mean, as bad as everything is, pretty terrible in a lot of different ways. We were sort of challenged in a quick way to change things. And for accessibility, which I like to talk about, being able to go to a meeting virtually, whether you have, an injury or you're homesick, if we can create a meeting environment where we exist in a traditional form, but are able to still engage with people who can't physically come in, I think that makes accessibility greatly improved for people. And sometimes I think I do recall somebody spoke out too with participation and being on boards if somebody's on a business trip and we're able to still bring people together. I guess I just feel like there's so many negatives. That's kind of a cool positive once we're back together.
Sure. Okay, that is our agenda. So I would ask if there's any public comment from the public. I see there's somebody on the phone. If you are listening on the phone and you wish to speak during public comment, please type *9 so I see your hand go up. Otherwise, I'm assuming you're just listening. So any public comment from the public? Okay.
Oh, they have their hand.
I'm trying to unmute you. Let's try this again. I think if you're muted on your end, there you go. Whoever's on the phone, you have the floor.
Okay. Hi, Tom. Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. I'll be very brief. First thing, I would suggest that thank you. Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street.
Go ahead.
That the town manager get in touch with. I would suggest that the town manager get in touch with Attorney Rob Bowen, because he, I think, was involved with that West Street land issue, and Jimmy Marino was right on. I think the whole intent was to expand a little bit to accommodate septic systems. The TIF. I wondered if the town had received a pro forma of what the anticipated expenses and revenues and timelines would be with the TIF request. I think it's important because I think we'd be embarrassed if all of a sudden on the fourth year they were making millions of dollars and we are unable to collect the taxes that we probably should have. I think that's a real stretch, but nonetheless, I think we should have some sort of look-see at the pro forma. Something Mr. O'Neill said tonight got my attention, and that was something about the growers. He said, which led me to believe that maybe the intent of this company is to coordinate the growing of this lettuce, and it's from other companies. And I have no basis of that, but I think we should develop that and find out exactly. The obvious inference is we should know what kind of revenue they expect to receive from these companies, if in fact it's the way they operate. The last issue is that how do they define under the TIF taxes? Because there's real property, and there's also equipment and machinery and sprinklers and that sort of thing. And if this is a 10-year gig, by the time 10 years comes up, I would think that most of the equipment would be fully depreciated, and therefore the tax revenue would be not significant. So the last thing I would like to see as Joe's citizen is that a side-by-side comparison of what the financial projections really equate to, what it would be if there were no tax relief and the projected increases or the revenue under the TIF. That's all I have. Thank you so much, and good evening.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the public? Any public comment from the board? Mr. Jeffries.
Yes. So really briefly, I've received two messages while we've been talking about the committee report I just provided. So I want to provide some clarification that all gym purposes are also preserved in the anticipated plan, that they are considered part of the town needs and are considered to be one of the highest priority. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Adams?
Sure. My comment, I had a little tidbit of a feel-good story that I intended to do at the beginning when I was talking about Google School. And there's so much negativity, and hybrid learning is so difficult, but a teacher shared a story today. She lives in Lunenburg. She teaches in a different district, but kindergarten is especially challenging because it's the children's first year. So they don't have a context for, how we know that this isn't how we normally meet. And a classroom was left open, and they were in there. The teachers were listening as the kids came back from their logged in specials. And the kindergarten children, all like we are now, who haven't met or aren't really interacting regularly, started asking each other to be friends. And it was just such a great story. She told it better in her post, but here we are like this. It's so strange, and we don't have the ability to have a small talk when we come in. How was your weekend? And just to think that kids have sort of overcome something and are sitting there in this capacity asking for friendship. It was just a great story. So hopefully there's hope and everything's heading in the right direction.
Let's hope that. Thank you. Any other board comments from? Okay, we do have an executive session before we adjourn. So I'd entertain a motion to enter into executive session and to adjourn after exiting executive session, not to return to open session. The executive session will be on its own private Zoom meeting. It is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21, Paragraph 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. This is regarding municipal employees and fire union contracts. And number 2, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21, Paragraph 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, and that is regarding the town manager contract. So I'd entertain a motion with those 2 executive sessions.
I move that we go to executive session.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, this is a roll call vote, not only because it's executive session, but because it's a Zoom meeting. So, Ms. Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
Mr. Marino.
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer. Oh, Mr. Dwyer is muted. I apologize.
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer. Okay, and an aye from me. Does everybody on here have the executive session Zoom information?
Yes.
Okay, we will meet right there. And there we go. We're going to go into executive session. It says adjournment on here, but we're adjourning into executive session. So we will end this. I wish everyone a very good week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see you next week on Tuesday, October, 13th, I guess. All right. Good night.
Night.
Good night.